I mentioned in my Ninja Shadow of Darkness video that I love the beat-em-up genre, and I used one particular retro beat-em-up to serve as the intro game for that particular video. Golden Axe. The arcade and console classic released first in 1989 by Sega, and one of my favorite games of all time, to be totally honest with you, dear viewer. And after playing Golden Axe for just that little bit, I knew I wanted to play it again. And doubly so, I wanted to make videos on not just the first Golden Axe, but a video for every game in the series as a whole. I also realized the timing was absolutely perfect to make a new Golden Axe video, since Arcade1Up recently announced a Golden Axe arcade cabinet, one that includes not only Golden Axe, but the never-before released outside of arcades Golden Axe, The Revenge of Death Adder, on top of Altered Beast, Shinobi, and Wrestle War, but this is a Golden Axe video, thank you very much. So, welcome viewers to video 1 in my little Golden Axe retrospective reviews. I wanted to get to a retrospective on this particular series since I just started planting seeds for the channel, and well, here we are starting. I'm excited, even though I know we don't exactly get to the happiest ending for this franchise, but we can worry about the bad times when we get to them. Let's focus on the good now. The original Golden Axe was helmed by designer-producer Makoto Uchida, who wanted to create, quote, Double Dragon but not Double Dragon, after that particular game took arcades by storm in 1987. Uchida, an admirer of action films like Conan the Barbarian, took to creating a swords and sorcery style world for the game. You can obviously see the influence of Conan on this game, even down to the death noises, which are lifted straight from Conan. And First Blood, too. Uchida also drew inspiration from Street Fighter 1 for the controls, citing the ability to press different combinations to get different moves and individual attacks. After a year of development from 1988 to 1989, Golden Axe was originally going to go by the name Battle Axe, then Broad Axe before the president of Sega USA at the time suggested a name change to Golden Axe after seeing the yellow-colored axe in-game. Though, according to Uchida himself, the Japanese text on the splash screen for Golden Axe still reads Broad Axe. So I guess if you can read moon runes, let me know if that's true. Golden Axe was a smash success, launching its own franchise that spanned 4 direct sequels and 3 spin-off titles before petering out in 2008, though Golden Axe characters do make additional appearances in Sega-related comics, crossover titles, and mobile games. If I could be serious for just one moment. Sega, you let .emu make Streets of Rage 4, you should definitely let them do Golden Axe 4 as well. They'd crush it entirely for sure. Returning to the first game from my deepest fantasies though, Golden Axe is a swords and sorcery fantasy game set in the mythical land of Uria. A nefarious entity by the name Death Adder has arisen alongside a dark army that's willing to do his bidding. Death Adder goes on a tear across Uria, conquering the lands and even taking the castle that serves as the ruling king's capital building. Death Adder takes the king and princess hostage and now rules over Uria with impunity. And now, it's up to the 3 brave heroes to bring him down, and this is where the fair tale of Golden Axe begins. Golden Axe gives you 3 valiant heroes to choose from, each of which are balanced in a different way from one another. Barbarian Beefcake Axe Battler charges into the fight wielding a broadsword in spite of his namesake, and explosion magic as well. Battler wants revenge for his mother, who was slain by Death Adder's forces. Axe Battler is your middle-of-the-road character. His melee power is average, his range is average, and his magic is average too. He's the perfect beginner character to play with. Amazonian warrior Tyrus Flare is the second hero, wading into battle alongside Axe Battler. Tyrus lost not only her mother to Death Adder, but her father as well. Tyrus has crappy range due to her short sword as her primary weapon, on top of weaker melee power too, but she makes up for it by having incredibly devastating fire magics. Fire magic, capped off by the ability to summon a whole damn dragon to torch the screen.
It is very hot in here.
The last member of this heroic triumvirate is Dwarf Warrior Gilius Thunderhead, a surly fighter out for revenge due to the loss of his brother by Death Adder. Seems like there's a pattern here, or maybe Death Adder should have just finished everybody off instead of leaving children and siblings alive. Gilius has the longest melee range and the strongest melee attack power out of the playable characters, but obviously this is traded off by his weak magical skill, even though the thunder magic is pretty radical. You and a friend, if you have one, pick your characters and battle across the mystical lands of Uria, fighting Death Adder's minions on your quest to take the big man out. Death Adder boasts a diverse bunch of flunkies and generals, including the stalwart Longmoan with his spike club, and Henninger, who clobbers you with a clump of gray grapes. On top of that, a group of Amazonian sisters who have betrayed Tyrus and her kingdom. The traitor Amazon group is called the Zubaroka and go by the names Storchinaya, Strobaya, Lemonaya, and Gruzia. Lastly, there's Death Adder's most nefarious minions, the Skeleton Warriors. I always hated fighting the skeletons as a kid, since, on the Genesis version at least, they had a nasty habit of catching you in an infinite attack string, killing you at any health level. I couldn't catch it on tape, unfortunately, but if you played the Genesis version, it's most likely happened to you at some point. These minions also ride into battle on monsters called Bizarrians, creatures who have been drawn into the conflict and serve as mounts for Death Adder's armies, and you as well when you kick those dumb bastards off them and take the mounts over. There are 3 Bizarrians in this game. There's the classic Chicken Leg, a very strange looking avian creature whose attacks by sweeping his tail, and, fun fact, actually made its first appearance in Altered Beast. I guess I might have to cover that game for this series too, since it was kind of progenitor to Golden Axe. And of course, the other 2 Bizarrians are dragons, coming in 2 colors, blue and pink. The blue dragon scorches the earth beneath foes, and the pink hawks molten loogies at your targets. Beyond these simple foes, you'll encounter Death Adder's most fierce warriors, the men who serve as generals in his armies, and are typically the final bosses of a given level. Bad Brothers, hammer-wielding giants with great mobility, and Death Adder's personal knights, heavily armored warriors with great attack power and range. You fight these foes in a variety of fantastic locations, starting humbly in a little village, to another village that's on the back of a giant turtle, to the Fiend's Path, to fighting on the back of a giant eagle who actually flies you right to the castle to engage in the final battle with Death Adder. Seems like Uchida might have read Lord of the Rings and asked, why didn't they just fly the damn thing to Mordor? Throughout the game, and in between levels, you can engage in many a Urian's favorite pastime as well, that pastime being kick the manlet. These little pricks, dubbed as thieves due to the fact they steal your mana pots at night, carry said pots, and food as well. Bully them liberally for free supplies on your journey. You engage with Death Adder's grunts as snakes slither into the background, eventually massing up to form the big man himself. This is honestly one of the most badass ways I've ever seen a final boss form up on me. It's actually pretty sick. You fight Death Adder to the death. If you kill his flunkies here, they get replaced by some smacked up skeletons, but all these baddies are no match for the fierce threesome of heroes. Death Adder's reign is brought to an end by his very own axe. After the tyrant is slain, you rescue the king and princess, a triumphant tune plays, and you're congratulated on winning the game. You're given a fun little outro of the various villains escaping from the arcade cabinet and menacing random civilians as the other heroes chase after them. Sega says, see you in the next game, and it restarts. Now, the arcade version of Golden Axe is pretty damn sick, but I have to be totally honest here, I spent most of my time playing Golden Axe on my Sega Genesis. I rented the crap out of this game as a kid, it being in the form of the Sega Genesis 6-pack, and I can say after all that time playing, on top of playing it in collections that have been released more recently, Genesis port definitely rivals the original arcade version, so let's switch over real quick. Now, I'll say right off the bat, the Genesis version definitely isn't perfect. There's a good amount of stuff that's missing from the arcade version, mainly due to the memory limitations of cartridges. Death Adder's sweet spawn animation is completely gone, alongside his running animation too. The knights don't have their throw attack, which makes them far easier opponents to deal with in the Genesis version. The villagers are also severely reduced in number, on top of the long moan stomping animation being absent as well. Death sounds have also been reduced to just 2, one for women and one for men. General animations for the characters are a bit worse off as well, but it's nothing too bad or noticeable. But in trading off all those things, the Genesis version makes up for it in spades, in my opinion. It still plays just as well as the arcade version, and most importantly, didn't downgrade the graphics like a lot of the other ports that came out for Golden Axe. Also, I gotta say, I think the sound effects and music in the Genesis version are superior to the arcade version. They really made it work with the limitations of the console and cartridge space. Here's some side-by-side differences so you can be the judge. The Genesis version also adds 2 additional modes, the first being Easy Mode, which is a halved version of the arcade mode that ends in a battle with Death Adder Jr., the son of the big bad, obviously, and the Duel Mode, which is a long gauntlet you have to clear with just 1 long life bar. Lastly, and most importantly in my opinion, the Genesis version also adds a whole additional level in the castle interior and a new final boss to battle, Deathbringer, a modeled green version of Death Adder who is even more powerful than Death Adder himself. Bringer has access to the player's most powerful magical spells and fights you alongside 2 near invulnerable skeleton warriors. Even with all these advantages though, Bringer is no match for our beastly group of heroes. You also get a completely different credit sequence, this one listing out the names and stats of your enemies in-game, ending with Gilius and Longmon playing some ball while Tyrus and Axe Battlers sleep in the background. Really, you could play either of these games and have a great time. Can't go wrong playing either for a Golden Axe experience. Ah, Golden Axe. It's a true classic of the beat-em-up genre. With everything covered now, I think I can comfortably end this video. My name, as always, is HadesManticore. This was just part 1 in the Golden Axe retrospective, and I will see you in part 2. Goodbye. Heroes arise and prepare to do battle with the forces of evil once more. This is the introduction for Golden Axe 2. Right at the start, you're given the backstory for the game. A few years after the events of the first one, an ancient evil by the name of Dark Gold has arisen, after being imprisoned since ancient times. A dark army arises alongside him, and under his control begins conquering and destroying countries all around the world of Uria. Knowing they did it once before, our intrepid team of 3 heroes once again takes up arms, so they may bring peace to the lands once more. So basically the story is almost identical to first. Ancient evil rises up, starts bunging everything up, and 3 heroes need to stop him. Simple, effective, and really, do you need any other motivation than stopping an evil empire? Golden Axe 2 was originally released in Japan on December 27th, 1991, just a scant year after the console ports of the original. 2 quickly reached North America on January 26, 1992, as well as the rest of the world thereafter. Golden Axe 2 was actually unique in that it was only released on the Sega Genesis, it never being ported to another console until game collections years down the line. This was a stark contrast to the original, which got ported to at least 11 different consoles. Now, since this is a sequel to Golden Axe, you're probably wondering what's changed. Well, more than you'd think at just a glance. At a baseline level, 2 does keep the winning formula from 1. You have a jump, a melee attack, and magic to use as well. On top of that, your throw is still there, and you have your falling attack too. The 3 heroes from the first game return as playable characters, though each do have some minor cosmetic changes. Gilius now sports spiked armbands, but is otherwise the same. Axe now has flowing long locks, as well as armor too. Tyrus now sports a tiara, one that I assume she got after slaughtering the rebel Amazons in the previous game and taking her kingdom back. Unfortunately though, both Axe and Tyrus now wear full loincloths, so rip cheeks. Gilius and Axe have also changed their respective schools of magic. Tyrus maintains her fire magic, thankfully, even still having a dragon show up to torch the screen for her max level spell, though the dragon is a lot smaller now since he can fit on the screen, unlike in 1. Gilius now sports the ever-devastating school of fart magic. I jest, of course. This is called rock magic, but do these even look like rocks to you? I think maybe the purplish shading is throwing me off quite a bit. I don't know. Just doesn't seem very rocky to me, you know? Axe Battler has given up the explosion magic in exchange for wind magic. As much as I do miss the explosions, I like the effects of the wind magic at least, especially since you can see the tornadoes pick up on-screen enemies and toss them around a bit. It's a nice little touch, at least. Speaking of magic, mana pots in the first game have now been replaced by magical tomes. Tomes dropped not by the manlet thieves of the first game, but by manlet wizards who are very hostile to you now, meaning you have to combat these magicians. The best change in the game also comes in regards to using your magic. In the first Golden Axe, you just used all your pots at once, doing whatever level of magic you were currently at. In 2, now you have the option to hold the button down to charge to the level of magic you want, meaning you have a bit more agency when it comes to your magic usage. In terms of new mechanics in play, back attacks, which I don't think I mentioned those at all in the first video, have been replaced entirely. For reference, in Golden Axe, if you hit your attack and jump buttons simultaneously, your character would lash out with an attack that hits directly behind them. I didn't mention it because, well, frankly, the back attacks are kind of useless. Only hitting behind you does kind of limit its use, and while I feel like the purpose of the move is for clearouts, if you're going to clear out an area, your best option is just jumping and mashing your normal attack. Regardless, they've been replaced by legitimate special attacks now, each one totally unique to each character, of course. Gilius plants his axe into the earth and spins himself around for his. Axe is a sick uppercut which you can combo into, and Tyrus does her best Guile impression.
Somersault!
Your throws can now be directed by tapping either left and right on your controller, which makes throwing enemies to their doom a far easier process in this game. Also, before I forget to mention it, apparently in the first Golden Axe, Tyrus and Axe both had the same melee attack range, which I said was a difference between them. This is changed in 2 to give Axe a little more range in his sword versus hers, thus reinforcing the same balance philosophy the first game had. Some offensive options have been toned down as well. You'll no longer be able to abuse dash attacks, since if you hit an opponent with 2 in a row, they will be granted invincibility frames from any follow-up dash attacks, rendering this classic tactic unviable. You'll also no longer be able to abuse falling attacks against slower enemies, as anti-air hitboxes are so fucking huge now. Larger enemies might as well be shooting anti-dwarf missiles whenever you enter their airspace. I did learn later you can circumvent this by trying to make the fall as ambiguous as possible, so it technically is still possible, it just takes a little more effort. Even with these nerfs though, I feel like the additions help smooth the experience out just fine. As much as I miss exploitable tactics, these changes help make the game a bit more challenging since you can't just exploit the AI so easily. There are 2 modes to play it in Golden Axe 2. You have the standard arcade mode, a fun adventure through the lands of Uria to destroy Dark Guild and all of his forces, and the Duel once again makes its return, same as it was in the first game. As for the levels in-game, there are 6 to battle through, starting in a sacked village, heading through some ancient ruins to a mountainside fortress, and lastly through a lava-adjacent cave affectionately called the Dragon's Throat. Thereafter, you arrive at Dark Gold's castle, battling on the outside and in the interior as well. Golden Axe 2 also features a near entirely new rogues gallery to do battle with on your journey across the lands. Gone are the predominantly human enemies of Death Adder's army, and in their place are the far more bestial and unholy creatures of Dark Gould. The Grenesse takes the place of our grape-wielding foe from Golden Axe 1, these guys being more moderately armored and attacking with double claws. Facing the Longmoan is the fairly similar Zakar. His club lacks spikes, but is twice as big to make up for it, on top of the fact the art for this particular warrior definitely makes him out to be fairly orcish in look, as opposed to just a human. The one enemy making their triumphant return in Golden Axe 2 are, of course, just to drive me crazy, are the Skeleton Warriors. They return, but they now eschew their falchions in favor of wicked hand size. Thankfully, they don't seem as strong as they used to be. Stepping in for the Amazon Warriors as slightly higher tier normal enemies are the far stronger and far sexier Hell Lizards. Lizard men armed with shield, longswords, and the devastating tail swipe ability formerly only seen on the Bizarrians. Since I brought them up, 2 sports 3 Bizarrians, just like the first game. There are 2 dragons, though I hesitate to call them as such, as they don't really look very draconic to me. They seem more lizard-like in my opinion, but I digress. These dragons have 2 colors: green dragons, which attack by doing donkey kicks, and pink, which spews fire, much like its predecessors. The chicken leg also makes a return, but now has twin tails and is far more demonic looking. My poor little chicken leg got bullied for looking dumb as hell and is now trying to look tougher to compensate. Gold's strongest warriors, though, come in 2 types, much like the original for Death Adder. The Minotauros are, well, minotaurs that wield massive maces that shake the earth on impact. Random fact about myself, young me when he played this game thought these weren't minotaurs but dog people. I don't know why I thought this, I suppose I never saw the horns, but was young me crazy? I can definitely kind of see the dog-like resemblance, but you'd be the judge. Death armors round out the generals of Dark Gold's armies. Massive Duelahands with huge shields and monstrous flamberge swords. Death armors are tough as hell to deal with and are even more intimidating than Death Adder's knights. Lastly though, after you battle through Dark Gold's legions of evil, you encounter the big man himself in the castle interior, sitting atop his throne and being protected by his most loyal servants. Slay his guards and take his head... Okay, well, you can't do that, but kill him and bring an end to the tyranny at least. Surprise though, just like the first game, that wasn't actually the big bad, but this is Death Gold himself. Head and all. A massive warrior wielding the titular Golden Axe. You guys should probably lock that up a little better so, you know, more villains don't get a hold of it. Gold is actually way tougher than Adder or Bringer even, partly due to the exploits being removed from this game, but mostly due to the fact that his basic attack is completely pants on head insane. Great reach, great damage, and swats you out of the sky like a bug if you try to come in from the air. Gold can also use magic as well, and even summon skeletons to fight you too, up to 3 of them, once again making Bringer look like shit with his 2 skeletons. Thankfully though, our heroic triumvirate is once again far too strong for the big man, and he dies. Sadly though, he doesn't get the dramatic own axe falling onto him like Adder and Bringer did. The heroes return to the village in the beginning and are hailed as heroes once more. The credits promptly roll, and Golden Axe 2 is finished. What is there to say about this game? I've read online that a lot of writers for various gaming magazines believe this game was rushed out to help bolster the catalog of the Sega Genesis, and honestly, I can kind of see the criticism. They definitely kept to being very similar to the original when it comes to core gameplay, but in this case, I don't think that's a bad thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know? Not to mention all the new mechanics and adjustments help to make the game better, even if I desperately miss stun-locking enemies with dash attacks. The sounds of the music this time out are a bit weaker though, in my opinion. Not that they're bad or anything, there are definitely some bangers in here, but they pale in comparison to the original's OST. Also, some of the tracks have a weird hip-hop style sound to them. I don't hate it, but I do think it's a bit of a bizarre choice for a Golden Axe game. It's not bad, mind you, it just seems like a song that would be out of Shinobi or Streets of Rage, to be totally honest. Regardless, 2 is a very solid sequel though, and it's definitely something that'll say any Golden Axe fan looking for more Golden Axe style action. I think that covers everything that needs to be covered with the sequel, so I'll end this video now. My name is Hades. Hello, dear viewers. Are you ready to take up arms and defend the people of Uria once again? This place certainly seems to have a lot of problems with petty despots constantly popping up and mucking everything up, huh? The next game in our humble Golden Axe retrospective is Golden Axe, The Revenge of Death Adder. Released in 1992, Revenge was yet another beat-em-up game. It was just until 2020 an arcade exclusive, only seeing the light of day outside emulation via the recently released arcade 1-up Golden Axe cabinet. Not my preferred method for this game to finally see a more mass release, but hey, it's a start at least. In terms of story, Revenge is pretty light on the details, to be honest. Death Adder is back again with yet another army of evil minions wanting to do his bidding. I ponder, where do evil overlords get their manpowers sometimes? He's also acquired the titular Golden Axe once again. You know, that legendary artifact that grants you immense power. He got it again somehow. Maybe they just left it in his chest last time and thought the job was done. Oh, since you're probably curious about how this game factors in timeline-wise, apparently Revenge is its own canon timeline and is a direct sequel to the original Golden Axe. So, now we have 2 separate timelines to contend with now. Great, it's like MK11, but hopefully better written. Instead of just taking over the castle to serve as his base though, Death Adder has constructed a fortress on a mountaintop, a stronghold crafted in his own visage as well. I respect the narcissism on display, to be honest. But like in every fantasy epic with an evil empire, there must be a group of great heroes to topple the damn thing, and Revenge of Death Adder has 4 heroes this time out instead of your normal 3. Most interestingly though, none of the original characters return as playable in this game, though Gilius does ride on the back of our first character, the guy I played for my playthrough, Goa. But before I break down the characters, let me tell you about what's changed in this game. The basics are still there, melee attacks, throws, magic, jumping, you know, your standard Golden Axe fare, but a lot has actually changed. Up to 4 people can now play the game simultaneously, and if you have multiple players, you can perform devastating team attacks upon your foes. Your basic combo can now put enemies into a stun state, which grants you access to a mashable close quarters attack. My favorite is Goa, since it's so damn funny to see someone punching the top of an enemy's head like he's a cartoon bully. Bonk, bonk. You no longer have a falling attack, but every character now sports a dive kick that can hit multiple targets. It can only be done at the apex of your jump though, so plan accordingly if you're going to use it to bail out of a bad situation. Your back attack is now just a special attack like in 2. Cool, totally awesome. Magic has changed drastically as well. Instead of having levels of magic that give you variable power level based on how many pots you currently have, every character in Revenge has only 1 spell that requires a certain number of pots to cast. You can also collect pots beyond that number, so you no longer have to worry about wasting any pots you pick up like in previous games, so hoard, hoard, hoard like a dragon. Character balance wise, it seems like Revenge has abandoned the melee magic sliding scale it previously relied on, and now every character is just a fully unique one with varying attributes and magical skill. Goa is our first character, as I mentioned, a giant of tremendous strength who wields an axe. Goa also carries Gilius Thunderhead on his back the whole game. Goa has the strongest melee power in the game, on top of having the strongest magic via the surly dwarf on his back. That magic not being lightning nor earth, but what I'm pretty sure is literal death magic. Holy shit, that's metal as fuck, dude. Gilius' magic turns every basic enemy in the game to stone and shatters them like glass. The most basic enemies get a fun little cutscene, too, of the absolute horror on their faces as they die horribly. Goa is my favorite character. Next up is Sternblade. Yeah, I know, he looks a lot like Axe Battler, but I promise it's not him. Honestly though, if I didn't know any better, I'd say he's the offspring of both Axe and Tyrus. He does look pretty close to Axe after all, and uses the broadsword as well. He also uses a dashing kick like Tyrus, and adopts her fire magic as well. Fire magic that violently melts the basic soldiers in a cutscene similar to Goa's. Also metal as fuck. Monster Girl Dora is our third hero, a centaur that uses one of those big ear cleaners from American Gladiators as a weapon. Dora is a pretty strong melee fighter, but has the weakest magic in the game, it capping out at a mere 4 pots. But having magic that weak puts her in the unique position of being able to chain her basic spell together for big damage. Let me say something about Dora though that kinda cheeses me off. Whenever she mounts one of the rideable monsters in the game, she gains a normal lady lower body. What the fuck? I wanted to see a horse riding a praying mantis, not this bullshit. And lastly comes Little Trix, one of those dorky elves you always see running around, but a little bit taller. Trix fights using a pitchfork, giving him the longest range amongst the playable characters in the game, and, in a first for Golden Axe, has a non-offensive magical spell. For magic, Trix summons a tree that subsequently drops apples, which you can eat for health, meaning Trix is meant to serve as a more supportive character. A character critical for multiplayer sessions for certain. I gotta say, I do love how they went about designing characters in this game, just striving to make them all interesting and fun to play versus putting them on a balanced scale like in previous games. Now, since the heroes are covered, let's get to the minions you'll be slaughtering en masse on your way to Death Adder. Death Adder's army brings faces both new and old, though none of them seem to have any names this time out, so I'll just ad-lib them. Death Adder's foot soldiers seem a lot more professional this go, with wearing more clothing, armor, and wielding big-ass swords instead of grape clusters. Alongside the soldiers come hammer-wielding manlets. These angry little hammer bros are a bit tougher than the foot soldiers, but are still run-of-the-mill grunts. Alongside these warriors come Savage Island tribals, wearing big bushy masks, swinging clubs, and hurling explosive rocks. These tribals are honestly a total delight. Look at them dancing, like Wurzag, the Great Green Prophet. Honestly, most of the times I run across them, I feel like I'm the intruder ruining a good party. They're just having a good time, and here I am, fucking it all up. On the more mystical side of things, tree men make their debut in this game as pretty kin foddery troops, whirling around deadly swords and sprouting out of the ground to attack you as you would expect a tree to do. I love fighting the tree men since when you kill them, they typically explode into splinters. A fun touch, one of many in this game. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, Death Adder brings back the Bone Boys once again. Skeleton warriors are back, wielding swords once again, and menacing you like it's Golden Axe 1 all over again. They're the meanest sons of bitches in Death Adder's second army for sure. The thieves also make their triumphant return in this game, still dropping pots and food, but this time the food thieves are fat.
Look, that kid's got bosom. Come here, you butterball.
Don't make me run! I'm full of chocolate!
Also, what would a Golden Axe game be without its Bizarrians? This time with even more bizarre. Revenge features 3 different mounts, with 2 of these mounts having 2 separate attack types for a total of 5 different creatures. Even crazier is none of the previous ones return at all. Well, Chicken Leg is still there, but seems to have taken on a role as a beast of burden as opposed to cavalry now. Once again, no respect for my mutant little chicken boys. I suppose the dragon still does exist in a more vestigial form as well, since one of the available mounts is a bone dragon. A bone dragon that still somehow pocked fire loogies as well, which honestly I kind of felt was useless. It was way too easy to miss with its downward angled shot that doesn't activate till it hits the ground. It goes off cliff sides too, which is pretty annoying. The new mounts in this game are giant insects that Adder has pulled from God knows where, and are split into 2 types with 2 different subtypes. The first to run across is a giant praying mantis with the ability to breathe fire. God, what a terrifying fantasy world this is. More sensibly, the other praying mantis slashes with its claws, can throw people, and even has a grab where they chomp on your target's head. If this game was really metal, this fight would have a death scene like the one in Alien Apocalypse. Then there comes the Scorpions as the second rideable giant insectoid mount. The first blast targets with high voltage electrical bursts from its stinger. God, Yuria only becomes more terrifying with every passing game, and the second Scorpion snaps at foes with its big, meaty claws. In addition to these mounts, enemies also roll out little artillery pieces that can be manned and fired, but are unfortunately stationary. Unless you have a mount, which can pick the artillery up and make it fully mobile. I think going with giant insects this time out was a very interesting choice. These monstrous beasts are definitely good representatives of an evil empire, and a reanimated dragon cuts close to the aesthetic as well, though I'd prefer if it breathed ice or something like a frost worm. They keep with the insect aesthetic later in the game as well when you run across a massive stag beetle that has a platform tied to it that serves as an elevator upward into Death Adder's fortress. This game really does nail its high fantasy feeling. I love it. On to Death Adder's strongest foes, though, the Amazons are back, bigger, meaner, and far more prone to high school bullying tactics than ever before. General Heartland also makes his return as an oafish general under Death Adder. You fight him a handful of times, but it's only the first time where he uses this clip on defeat. A clip that I'm 100% sure is just Raphael from the first live-action TMNT film.
Come back here! I'm not finished with you! Damn!
If you were curious about the sounds, basically all the death sounds from the first game return as well. So, all the Conan the Barbarian ones and First Blood screams are here. With this one addition for the Amazon lady that I mentioned earlier. Cyclops serves as another member of Adder's most elite forces, though I don't know why he has Heartland's Scream of Death as his guttural war cry. It's a bit odd in my opinion. And lastly are the Bone Reapers, because the skeletons needed a stronger, angrier, bigger brother to beat your ass, I guess. The first time you fight one is in a dark room, which you light with the sparks created by slashing the Bone Reaper's armor. It's a cool little effect for sure. They went all out with this game and its fun little bits. You'll fight all these minions across the fantastic lands of Uria, of course, and in places just as amazing as the first game. Unlike the first game, though, Revenge has branching paths in certain levels, giving the game some additional replayability. Revenge features your typical human villages being braided, dark, dank caverns, sinister-looking forests, a village of the little elves you're used to kicking around as opposed to actually helping, but I guess it's nice that this entire bunch of people aren't sneaky little thieves after all. You'll battle across a ship with giant pits full of bones for necromancy, and finally to the best location in the game, Death Adder's Fortress of Narcissism. You battle your way to the top of the stronghold, blasting off massive chunks of Adder's visage as you go until you finally reach the top, where the big bad is lying in wait for you. This time out, Death Adder is bigger, meaner, and has a few tricks up his sleeve. Most pressingly to you being that damn Dragon Maw shield of his. Want to know what it does? Well, you cast a spell and... Yep, it completely nullifies any magic you attempt to cast. Adder did his research, it seems, and is ready to deal with any heroic magic. Nice to see a villain adapt for once. Thankfully, you destroyed the shield in the first phase, so you can just hold your magic till the second. You fight a pissed off Adder in phase 2, now vulnerable to magic, and still vulnerable to ass kickings. You beat Adder down and hop onto your escape dragon as his fortress crumbles. Barely got away with our lives there.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Oh shit! He's not dead, and he's even more pissed off now. Engage in one final climactic battle with Death Adder atop your dragon escape. You defeat him, but uh-oh. Looks like he's gonna pull out one last big attack to take us all with him. What will happen now? In the 11th hour, Gilius leaps from Goa's back, buries his axe into Death Adder's skull, and the two plummet to their deaths together. Adder is defeated thanks to the valiant sacrifice of Gilius Thunderhead, and the surviving heroes head home to celebrate their victory and mourn the loss of a great hero. This is where Revenge of Death Adder ends. So, how does this sequel compare to the first and the first sequel? Well, it blows both of them completely out of the water, to be honest. Putting it simply, Golden Axe: The Revenge of Death Adder is an amazing game in every way. The only thing I'd say that isn't an improvement is the music, but it's hard to top the original soundtrack. Not to say Revenge's soundtrack is bad or anything, though, it holds its own just fine. It's genuinely very sad that this game never managed to escape its arcade-only status, because it's far and away the best one. Anywho, if you're a fan of beat-em-ups and haven't had the pleasure of enjoying Revenge of Death Adder, I thoroughly recommend giving it a shot in a perfectly legal manner at your earliest convenience. With Revenge now out of the way, we'll move on to Golden Axe's first non-beat-em-up title. How exciting. As always, though, I'm HadesManticore. This is City State Manticore. I mentioned it briefly in one of my Golden Axe videos, that there was a game that was sort of the progenitor to that series.
Rise from your grave.
Altered Beast, a side-scrolling beat-em-up released to arcades in August of 1988. I say this game is the progenitor to Golden Axe since, well, this was Makoto Uchida's first game as a lead developer at Sega, and because the chicken leg from Golden Axe cameos as an enemy in later levels. Why review this game now instead of after you've finished with all of the Golden Axe games? Well, truth be told, I'm not having fun with Golden Axe Warrior in the slightest, so that one's gonna take a bit. Much like with Golden Axe, Uchida was inspired by particular films he enjoyed before making the game, though this time he was inspired by The Howling and the music video for Michael Jackson's Thriller. It explains the zombies and the transformations, at least. Story. Altered Beast takes place in ancient Greece. Zeus's daughter, Athena, has been kidnapped by the evil ruler of the underworld, Neph, this guy right here. I make that joke, but after I did a little research, I found out that there was actually more to the game's story, though you'd have to play the Japan-exclusive Famicom version Juoki to know about it. In that version, Neff is a demon god who sees the underworld from Hades by force. Whipped like the cur he is, Hades runs to Zeus for help. Zeus puts together an army, including Athena, and intends to take the underworld back from Neff. While storming the underworld, though, Athena is taken captive by Neff, and he threatens to harm her if Zeus doesn't leave. Zeus buggers off and decides alongside a council of the other gods that they need to resurrect the fiercest warrior to ever live to deal with Neff. Zeus resurrects the beast warrior, known as the Centurion in the English versions, and sends him to go deal with Neff. And thus, the game begins. You play as the Centurion after Zeus urges you to
Rise from your grave.
Almost immediately after doing so, you're assaulted by the undead. Fortunately, your Centurion was born to kick ass, so you have plenty of ways to defend yourself. You can kick your foes in the shin, crack them in the mouth, punch them in the daddy bags, and kick them in the gooch when they jump over you. I gotta say, these are some of the most bizarre kicks I've ever seen in a game. I guess I couldn't think of a better anti-air style attack, so this is what they went with. You won't be attacked by just zombies, though. Neff fields all manner of undead, monsters, and furry sodomites to stop you. I want to throw these into broad categories, but they all have such bizarre names that I want to include them. Victims of old Japanese naming schemes, I suppose. The Slowfoot and the Headless Horror, though I prefer the more direct translation of Bonehead for that one. Skinny Orcus, a little flying demon. The Grave Master, a more smacked up zombie with hands. The Chicken Stinger, our humble little chicken leg before Golden Axe took him over. The Rattletail, dragons that warn you of their approach much like a rattlesnake. But you can stop them if you kick the rattle off, or you can knock their block off when they attack. Round Leeches, these frog creatures that lock onto your head and suck your brains out. Cave Needles, who blindly charge you with their dick out. Rock Turtles, probably the most sensibly named enemy in this game. Wait, I take it back. Hammer Demon is definitely the most sensibly named enemy. Or maybe it's the Sawfish? Points for being literal, Japanese translators. Then there's the Gory Goat, an angry little satyr. Bad boars who can throw hands and come out slinging tonfas for some reason. And by far the most frustrating enemy in the game, the Dark Unicorn. Hedonistic furries who flamboyantly leap through the air and assault you with their throbbing horns. Old Japanese naming conventions were always worth a giggle due to how strange they came out when translated. That's for sure. But I forgot the most important enemies to note here are the three-headed wolves. I always thought these were pigs when I was a kid, to be honest. The glowing albino version of these wolves will drop a spirit ball on death, which powers you up.
I wrote a blog post a while ago about why I f***ing hate video games, because this is what it does. It appeals to like the male fantasy.
Power up. Power up.
You get ripped, more ripped, and then your Centurion morphs into his hypercharged up persona. Someone on the dead team had a fetish of some kind, and I'm not sure I like it here. Each level has a different transformation as well, accompanied by slightly different attack types for each. You also get a fun little transformation scene for each beast too, with a distinct howl to accompany them. The werewolf hurls Haldukins and charges into the fray with a pointed arrow covering his body. The dragon throws a lightning bolt and projects lightning all around himself. The bear belches with foul enough breath to turn his opponents into stone, and he blanket balls all over the place too. Zyger shoots a zigzagging fireball and shoots himself up with his energy as opposed to straightforward, and the final transformation is just a golden werewolf. You'll need all the power these transformations give you too, since at the end of each of Altered Beast's 5 stages there is a beefy, powerful boss awaiting you. That and a lot of the later game minions are actually tough as hell to deal with if you aren't transformed. These bosses on defeat will also suck the power from your bones and return you to being your normal soy boy self, laughing as they do. The climax of the game, you'll do battle with Neff. The real Neff, since the other 4 were just clones of him sent to deal with you. You kill him, rescue Athena, and the game ends, revealing to you that this was all just an elaborate movie shoot. None of this was real. Man, these fucking stuntmen worked me over hard if that was the case. Altered Beast, much like many arcade games at the time, was ported to a variety of systems in the years after its release. Truth be told, I'm far more familiar with the Genesis port of this game, since the first time I ever played Altered Beast was on one of those Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection games, the 360 version to be precise. Truth be told as well, the two do feel actually completely different from one another. Shocking, I know, an arcade game and a console port being so different feeling. The arcade version obviously looks better, has better sound quality, and animations as well. But I can't lie, it feels slower when it comes to the combat. I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe it's because I'm more used to the Genesis version, but my attacks felt way slower and as a result were much harder to use, especially on the more difficult enemies later in the game. The Genesis version attacks felt way snappier and more responsive. The game's super jumps felt way better to use too, not being delayed in the the slightest when I was using it to negotiate high jumps. The Genesis version bosses also seem a little bit more exploitable as well. For instance, the second stage boss, this eyeball watermelon thing, if you just charge up to it the second it opens up and mash your body electricity, you can kill him in about 2 seconds. I tried this in my arcade run, and while it was kind of effective, I didn't take a single hit in the Genesis version. It also looks like the sheer force generated by your beefed up punches hangs a bit more in the Genesis version, meaning you could take advantage of these damaging active frames. The bit crush sounds of the Genesis version are also, quite frankly, hilarious, and it makes the Genesis version worth a play for them alone.
Rise from your grave.
Welcome to your doom.
To go to a completely different side of the game though, the Japan-exclusive version of Altered Beast for the Famicom, while maintaining the same basic gameplay elements, adds 3 additional transformations and levels to use them in. A lion, a shark, and a phoenix to cap it all off. But at the end of the day, what is there to actually be said about Altered Beast? Most certainly it is a predecessor to Golden Axe, though it feels like the game took more influence from Kung Fu Master. It's blunt, brutally difficult at times, and vaguely erotic in nature.
Come on, college boy.
Altered Beast is a fun little game, though. It's something you'll want to give a try if you want to see what beat-em-ups were like before major hits like Golden Axe and Final Fight refined the genre into what it looks like today. The series did actually get 2 sequels, though. Altered Beast, Guardians of the Realm for the Game Boy Advance, and Juoke, Project Altered Beast, a PS2 title that never managed to make it over to the States, and has nothing to do with the original games whatsoever. Those won't be in this retrospective, obviously, but I'll probably cover them in the future at some point, especially Juoke, Project Altered Beast. I'm HadesManticore. This channel is City State Manticore. In the year of our Lord, 1991, Golden Axe took its first step outside the realm of side-scrolling beat-em-ups with the top-down adventure game, Golden Axe Warrior. A Sega Master System exclusive. Just looking at it, gameplay-wise at least, it's essentially a clone of Legend of Zelda. Story-wise, Warrior is yet another separate timeline in the canon of the Golden Axe multiverse. This, to my count so far in this retrospective at least, makes 3. Story! Generations ago, a great war raged between a race of evil giants and their minions led by Death Adder, going up against humanity. The war raged fiercely until the Golden Axe, a gift from the Norse god Thor, was given to the elders of humanity, who used the weapon to put the giants down and bring peace to the land. After this great victory, the royal family of Firewood was entrusted with the Golden Axe should Death Adder ever make a return. Good forethought, since he's done it so many times already. To protect the axe, the royal family of Firewood created 9 magical crystals, which protected the kingdom of Firewood from evil. The axe is in good hands. Later on, Death Adder makes his triumphant return, conquering the neighboring kingdoms of Nindoria and Altarulia, but knows he can't conquer Firewood until those crystals are gotten rid of. Fortunately for Death Adder, and unfortunately for Firewood, a greedy minister steals the crystals and sells them to Adder for a fine price. Adder and his army of monsters rampage through Firewood, killing the king of the country and its princess, Tyrus. Death Adder now rules the land with impunity, and that's where Golden Axe Warrior begins. You play as a warrior that you get the privilege to name yourself. Your parents were killed by Death Adder's invasion, and now you want revenge, of course. So you grab your knife, some chainmail, and set out from your humble village home on a great quest to kill Death Adder and restore peace to the lands once more. Your objective for the game is simple. Retrieve the crystals, which have now been hidden in 9 labyrinths by Death Adder, get the Golden Axe, and bury it into Death Adder, just like Golden Axe 1. These labyrinths are scattered all about this mess of a map, so you begin your exploration in earnest. Along the way, you'll be accosted by a variety of vile monsters under Death Adder's command, though almost none of them have anything to do with the previous minions you've done battle with in Golden Axe, which, honestly, that's kind of disappointing to me. They do at least have skeleton warriors to do battle with, and I'm almost sure these are chicken legs? Maybe. Oh, also, at the least, General Heartland is the boss of the first dungeon, and is a boss later on in the game too, so that's something. But otherwise, you just kind of fight some stock fantasy enemies, you know? Slimes, pigmen, but since this game came from Japan, they're probably orcs, sentient fire, ogres, Nessie, clams, and of course, who could forget such other classic villains as Silverfish, sentient balls, Bee! Gross eyeball that shoots laser beams, angry molesting tree, and a minotaur. These various enemies will also come in a variety of colors, which represent varying strengths of these creatures, green and blue being the weakest, and red being the strongest, I believe. As you slay these foes, they will on occasion drop items you can pick up. Sometimes small food.
Damien hungry. Wants sweet roll.
Sometimes big food. Sometimes they drop horns, which are the game's currency, and on rare occasions they drop an hourglass, which... freezes the entire screen, giving you free enemies to kill and free loot if they drop it. Why such a strong item is dropped by normal enemies, I'm not totally sure. They try to make the bosses a bit more unique, though. Like, there's a couple dragons you fight with, there's some big evil wizards, and
I am Sinistar.
on your journeys throughout the Shattered Lands of Firewood, you can find, as well as purchase with horns, a new weapon, armor, shields, and just normal items like keys and oil. Horns are also what you pay the Reaper when you die, so you can be dropped either at the last inn you rested at, or at the beginning of a labyrinth, so death is pretty cheap. Which reminds me, inns are basically your save point on the map if you die. Some of them are free, but some of them will cost you horns, so just try to remember that so you don't get caught balls deep in the map with no money and no health like I did. New equipment is something you'll obviously want, since with better weapons comes better damage and different swing arcs, and better armor means you're more resilient to enemy attacks. You'll also come across various useful items like climbing rope and a raft, which will allow you to access new areas of the game and find those additional labyrinths you need to get through. You can also meet other NPCs who are either very helpful and nice. You have life? Yeah, not really, I make YouTube videos. Or just extort you for money. You better pay up before you leave? Or what, old man? What are you gonna do? You'll also be able to learn magic from some of the game's NPCs. At the least, you do meet some familiar faces here. You can meet both Gilius Thunderhead and Axe Battler, both of whom will teach you magic. Well, Axe will teach you Earth magic only after you pay him 40 horns. Hey Axe, we're all trying to kill Death Adder here, not try to pay for your crippling speedo addictions. How about you just teach me Earth magic for free, huh? Gilius teaches you lightning magic, which is just a simple projectile, and Axe teaches you Earth magic, which freezes enemies for some reason. Far cry from the nuclear explosions of Golden Axe 1. You also use it to clear certain blocks in the labyrinths. I guess that makes more sense at least. Which, bringing that up can let me bring up the puzzle-solving aspect that's required in this game. Since this is an adventure game, you'll have to engage in some light puzzle-solving in various mazes you have to conquer. Sometimes it's something simple, like mashing your attack on a candelabra, which opens a room. You wouldn't really know to do that, though, since it's just a candelabra. There's nothing really that sticks out about it, and a lot of them are just there for room dressing. This game seems to require a lot of trial and error, to be honest. You also have stuff like, chop down this tree, and it opens this area. Why? Where's the logic exactly? Going back to Earth magic, there also isn't really any indication as to what blocks on the map are destructible. You just kinda have to guess and hope you don't run out of mana pots in your current run, or hope you can find an enemy that'll drop a pot for you if you do run out. A similar issue arises with the climbing rope. There are certain mountainous regions you can climb up, but once again, there's literally no way to know which walls you can climb. You just kinda have to smash your face up against walls till you climb up them. Am I missing something here? Shouldn't there be like some sort of different look to these rocks? I know Legend of Zelda had similar puzzles, but that game was released 5 years before this one. Couldn't some improvements have been made in any way whatsoever? Can't lie to you guys, I didn't finish this game. I got about 5 labyrinths done before I was just getting too bored and way too frustrated, which completely killed my motivation to continue playing this game. There's also the frustrating fact that saving didn't work for me. Now, maybe I just misunderstood, or maybe I was giving way too much credit to old game consoles, but I'd save my game, turn it off to go take a break for a while, only to come back in to see my save file completely gone. Hooray! I have to be honest when I say this. I genuinely do not enjoy games like this, and yes, that includes the original Legend of Zelda. But I want to finish this video in at least some detail, so any footage you see from now on was graciously provided by the World of Long Plays on YouTube. Thanks guys, really. Also, anytime I've used World of Long Plays footage before, I've marked it with their logo in the corner. Once again, thank you very much, guys. After smacking yourself up considerably and collecting all 9 crystals, you'll eventually learn that Princess Tyrus is still alive, and after that you head to the final labyrinth under the sea. You also learn that you are the son of the now-dead King of Altarulia from a surviving maiden from the King's Court. Collect the golden axe from a random chest deep within, and face down Death Adder with it, who apparently is exploitable since you can just sit in this doorway and hack him to death with the axe while he just stands there. Death Adder dies, the lands are united, everybody celebrates your victory, and the golden axe disappears, only to return when evil does. Ah, another adventure done. Okay, so straight up, I do not like this game. Like, in the slightest. Golden Axe Warrior is a clone of Legend of Zelda. If you enjoy games similar to Legend of Zelda, you will probably like Golden Axe Warrior. But I don't. I don't think this is a bad game for reference, just one I genuinely do not like, and I'm very happy to finally have out of the way after dragging my feet on this topic for so long. So let's move on to the next game. God damn it, another adventure game? Great. Anyway, I'm HadesManticore. This was another game in the Golden Axe Retrospective. Thanks once again to World of Long Plays for letting me use their footage, and to long player TO815 for somehow playing this game in one sitting without being bored to tears. Leave a like and comment. So, ever forward we march on our fun little Golden Axe retrospective. Once again though, I've hit another roadblock with another adventure-style game as opposed to something actually fun. This second adventure game is entitled Axe Battler, A Legend of Golden Axe. Released first in Japan on November 1st, 1991, and followed up with releases in North America in March of 1992, as well as the rest of the world. Legend was a bit of a strange title in that it was a Sega Game Gear exclusive game. Yeah, this brick right here, which was Sega's answer to the Game Boy. It sold better than the Atari Lynx, at least? Let's talk about box art for a second, though. I can't lie, I do love the Japanese box art over the NA one in this instance. It's got a very Dynasty Warriors look and vibe to it. Yeah, the North American and PAL ones are more faithful to what Golden Axe actually is, but I find the Japanese one far more interesting, at least. Legend has its own story to tell as well, and what I'm pretty sure is its own universe, too. Once again, complicating the timeline of the Golden Axe universes even further. I think it's at 4 now? I'm done keeping track, really. Story for this one goes that the gods gifted the Golden Axe to mortals and said whomsoever wields it would have amazing power and all the peoples of the world would bow to them. This of course caused a ton of wars to be fought over possession of the axe, which caused the King of the Firewood at the time to simply hide the axe in the castle's basement. Probably in a chest, probably under an old wagon wheel, so no one would look there. Out of sight, out of mind, am I right, my boyos? This seemed to work for some reason, so everybody started calming down. Years go by, and Death Adder comes as he's apt to do in this world, and he sends his minions to smash the castle and steal the Golden Axe for him so he can have supreme power. They succeed, and the king is forced to call upon the best warrior in his domain. That warrior's name? Axe heads forth on his quest with the power of love and courage at his side. He's only missing the power of friendship now, and he'd be a true anime protagonist. But there's no other characters in this game, so it's just Axe and you against the world. Our game actually starts with the theft of the axe itself, and you being called to deal with it. Legend, much like its predecessor Warrior, is an adventure game. From this feat alone, it's pretty clear the devs were once again taking influence from the Legend of Zelda franchise, this time with 2 instead of 1, obviously. One half of the game is played with this top-down view. In a town, you'll be able to converse with NPCs, to give you helpful hints on where to go, and occasionally they'll give you items you need to advance. On the overworld map, you'll be free to explore the lands of Firewood and visit the various locales of the kingdom. Credit I can give to Legend is it actually does try to include a few familiar locations from the first Golden Axe game. You'll get to visit the Turtle Village at a point, and you'll ride a giant eagle later on as well. They also try to diversify the environments a bit too, with stuff like deserts and icy cliffs. Only bone I have to pick here is that the game describes this overworld landmark as a pyramid, and it really does not look like a pyramid, but a pile of shit instead. You'll need to explore all these locales as well to advance the game, obviously. Another credit I can give to Legend that it's pretty straightforward and easy to navigate, far more so than Warrior was for sure. You generally can find where you need to go via simple exploration of the map, and if you can't do that, villagers tend to give you helpful hints as to where to head next. Stuff like, there's a cave to the east. You know, simple instructions. Villagers are also always in villages, too. The NPCs in this game aren't secreted away in hidden hovels scattered all through a needlessly giant map. Praise the sun for simple, sensible game design. The only time the game ever got confusing was when the advice that I needed on where to go next was given to me by a chicken leg. Yes, one of those chicken legs. The other half of Legend is the combat, which is pretty close to being a side-scrolling beat-em-up, truth be told. Done in this 2D view, you'll fight one-on-one duels with enemies in this mode, on top of exploring treacherous locales populated by tons of nefarious enemies. At a base, in this mode you'll have access to a humble jump, a humble standing slash, a humble jumping slash, and a humble crouching slash. Your claymore techniques at the start are absolutely trash though, and you'll have to struggle with them for a while before getting access to better moves. You'll have magic at your disposal as well, but you won't use it much, truth be told. Reason being is your sword is super good once you start getting the better techniques, with most of your slashes killing enemies in one blow. On top of the fact that magical pots are your currency in this game, required to stay at the various inns in the villages, which that's the only way to restore your health if you've taken any damage. Honestly though, I guess saving for the inns doesn't really matter, since if you die you just respawn back at the password house of the last village you visited. Death, once again, is very cheap in this game, which is a good thing in this case, since the combat is the absolute drizzling shit. At a base it functions fine, which really, that's not much of a compliment. You made a working game. Congratulations. As I said earlier, you start out with nothing but 3 horizontal swipes, which have terrible hitboxes. Thankfully, you do get better techniques later on, with the apex of them being the classic shoulder block. The techniques you learn are helpful, but the hitboxes can be a bit inconsistent. to say the least. Some enemies are also very frustrating to deal with, like these ghosts here, for instance. Ghosts are only vulnerable when they go into their dive bomb attack, so you have to put yourself in danger to deal with them. Even worse, in this part, you can't advance upwards till you kill the majority of them, so you have to fight them and possibly take damage in the process. There's also these little hedgehogs which are completely impervious to damage for some reason. Just because it's your mascot doesn't entitle it to be immortal, Sega, come on. In addition to these area fights, you have these one-on-one duels too, which happen mostly via random encounter. God, these random encounters happen way too often. Take 2 steps, get into a fight. Take a step, get into a fight. Repeat ad nauseum as you desperately attempt to get to the next area of the game. These duels are how you acquire magic pots, so maybe you do want more of them to happen, but holy shit, let me breathe sometimes, please. Also, you already aped the gameplay from Legend of Zelda 2. Could you not have stolen the part where the enemies were walking on the overworld map and running into them started the encounter? If I can compliment anything with the duels is that, 1, the enemies fought here are all Golden Axe style enemies for sure. These barbarians, which seem like a combination of Longmoans and Henningers. You have the Amazons here too, on top of skeleton warriors. They even have the jumping attack they used to have as well. The Bad Brothers show up too, but with these wicked looking helmets covering their heads this time out. Everyone got a pretty rad upgrade, truth be told. The duels also have unique art depending on what tile you were engaged on, whether it be grasslands like this or bridges like this. It's unique to each tile set. My favorite part though is every time you defeat an enemy, you're greeted with "The enemy was destroyed," which honestly is up there with "Prey slaughtered" as best post-fight victory words. But here's the hitch with all these duels. If you get hit once, they end. I have a question. Why? It's unbelievably stupid. Are Death Adder's minions not out here to, you know, kill me? Make sure I die before I stop him? Apparently not, since they just bonk you once and they fuck off immediately. Why don't they fight to the death exactly? Even worse, this one hit equals a loss system extends to the duels that unlock your better weapon techniques. I forgot to mention it earlier, but your weapon techniques are unlocked via these duels that happen in the TR buildings and villages. So one fuck up, guess what? Do it again, and again, and again if you don't play the duel exactly perfect. That's fun. Why aren't these duels also to the death exactly? It just makes everything way more frustrating for no reason. I'm wrapping this one up now. Truck across the land, head up the mountains, head up to Death Adder's castle, kill him, and get the axe back. Simple and clean. Done. Another Golden Axe game beaten. Ha! That's how it should go, but it actually doesn't. This is how it goes. You fight Death Adder on a random bridge that leads up to his castle. Yeah, not at the climax, on a random bridge. What's at the top of this castle, you know, and not the big final boss guy from almost every Golden Axe so far? Well, let me tell you. In the top-down view that you usually have when you're exploring a world map, Axe trades wits with a black screen. The black screen chats shit. Axe says he's got some anime shit on his side, and then he slashes the darkness in 2. It dies, the castle collapses, and the game subsequently ends. That is literally the worst ending I have ever seen for a game ever. You know, I hated Warrior pretty damn clearly, but at least you fought Death Adder at the end of that game. Not here! You get a cutscene, and not even a good cutscene. There's no slash effect, it's just blackness. Deathbringer? Maybe? Could have been Deathbringer, maybe, or anything? This game just finds constant ways to disappoint you. Holy hell. God, I didn't know doing a Golden Axe retrospective would lead me to some miserable places, but that's another one out of the way at least. Legend was not particularly fun. It's better than Warrior at least, but that's not saying much. It's worth a play if you have literally no other Golden Axe games to play, other than Warrior, I mean. You can play it once, and that's really all you'll need. Plus, it being a Game Gear exclusive pretty much damns it to obscurity, and rightfully so. I guess they tried? That's something nice I can say at least. It has things reminiscent of a Golden Axe title, and that's pretty much where my compliments end. But the combat pretty much sinks the game entirely. There really isn't much enjoyment to be had with Legend, so it's better off just being forgotten. But with the crappy adventure games out of the way, we can return to the fun side-scrolling beat-em-ups now. Hooray! As always, though, I'm HadesManticore, and this is my channel, City State Manticore. Golden Axe 3. We're finally away from the adventure games that have plagued me for 2 successive episodes of this retrospective. Back to basics. Back to what's actually fun. Golden Axe 3, though, is actually kind of an interesting case. 3 was first released in Japan on June 25th, 1993, with Sega actually having no intention to release the cartridge outside of it. You actually had to import this game if you wanted to play it on its initial release. 3 did eventually worm its way over to the States via the Sega Channel, a cable television-based subscription service which hosted a rotation of Genesis games you could play every month for a nominal fee. Talk about a company being way ahead of the curve with subscription services, holy hell. Even if it didn't work out, this is actually an impressive idea to me, especially for 1995. 3 also eventually landed on a bunch of those Genesis game collections, which was how I actually played it for the first time, so it did manage to proliferate itself across the world, even if Sega hadn't planned for it to do so. What surprised me in my initial research stages on Golden Axe 3 is this one actually got blasted by critics that reviewed it. 5s and 6s out of 10s all abound for this game. Is it really that bad though? How can you screw a beat 'em up? I wonder how, but honestly, after 2 crappy adventure games, I'm willing to take even the worst side-scrolling beat 'em up ever. Crap, I have to review Badass Babes at some point. Story. This game actually takes place in a pre-established timeline instead of setting up its own. Hooray! After the events of Golden Axe 2, Gilius Thunderhead realizes the Golden Axe has caused way too many problems here in the world and decides to give it back to the gods. Kinda rude to give a gift back, admittedly. Gilius hops onto a boat with the axe, but unfortunately while it's in transit back to Olympus, the boat sinks and the axe is lost amongst the waves. Unfortunately, things got worse when the axe ended up in the hands of Damned Hellstrike, another evil giant, and one with the most badass name in quite some time. Hellstrike uses the powers of the Golden Axe to assemble an army and to take over the land of Splash Hill, which kinda sounds more like a Sonic level versus a fantasy medieval kingdom, but I digress. Seeing all this shit going down again, Gilius Thunderhead knows he has to do something, but he himself is far too old to charge into reckless combat anymore, and both Axe Battler and Tyrus Flare have passed in the years since Golden Axe 2. Gilius now puts out the call for warriors, and 4 brave new heroes rise to challenge Damned Hellstrike and his minions. Kane Grinder, a barbarian whose tribe was massacred by the forces of Hellstrike. Sarah Byrne, a member of a traveling entertainment troupe and the sole survivor after a massacre by Hellstrike's forces. Proud Cragger, a half-giant buried underneath the earth by damned Hellstrike, but was freed by Gilius Thunderhead. He shows his gratitude now by joining up with our heroes. He also kinda looks like the Ultimate Warrior.
Load the spaceship with the rocket fuel! Load it with the worst!
And lastly, Kronos Evil Late, a human transformed into a furry by damned Hellstrike. A cruel, evil fate if there ever was one, to be honest. He joins up with the heroes in the hopes of being returned back to his human form. As an aside, I don't know why Kronos has the nickname of Evil. If he was some noble that betrayed Splash Hill and sold him out to Hellstrike, but got transformed by him in a double-cross style scenario, I'd get it, but they never really elaborate. Maybe he's evil just because he's a furry, I don't know. Additionally, Kate and Sarah are understandably mislabeled as Axe Battler and Tyrus Flare in certain Genesis collection ports of Golden Axe 3. They're very aesthetically similar to their predecessors, so I get it, really. Before the heroes set out to kill Hellstrike and bring peace to the lands, though, that dastardly villain hits the heroes with a mind control spell. Gilius is only able to save 1, or 2 if you're playing co-op, from the mind control, and that's where the game proper begins. You pick your hero and begin your quest across Splash Hill. So what's new in this go-around? Mechanically, Golden Axe 3 still functions the same on a basic level. It is a beat-em up after all, no need to change the winning formula, but the game does add a good amount of features to your movesets. You still have your simple attack combo, your get-off-me defensive strikes, throws for repositioning, running attacks, and jump attacks, of course. Every character has a sweep now, though, performed by pressing down and the attack button together. This instantly knocks opponents back into the ground. You can now block by holding back and your attack button together. That's very useful, obviously, since it actually comes out almost instantly. So as long as you have good reactions, you can block most of what your opponents will throw at you. You also have these forward-moving power attacks, which do good damage and knock opponents down too. Each character also has mechanics that are unique to them. For instance, Sarah and Kronos have the ability to double jump. What's its use? I'm not entirely sure. Cragger has a devastating jumping grab that does an insane amount of damage to foes, but it's also the lamest looking thing I have ever seen in a beat-em-up. Mike Hagar pile drives you. Proud Cragger just kinda lays you down for a nap. Sleep well, minion. Every character also has a special move, which has a specific input needed to execute it. Kane has a ground wave fireball, Sarah hurls her sweet scimitar, Cragger throws multiple tornadoes out in front of him that can cover his short range, and Kronos can blank a ball. All these additions add a good amount of depth to each character when all is said and done. Though, if I could complain, I'd definitely say balance is all over the guff when it comes to these characters, good god. I want to say they tried to keep the same dichotomy of speed versus strength versus range, but it doesn't really work out like that, unfortunately. So Sarah is the fastest and most agile character. Kronos is also in the same category, but with slightly more damage, though he's lacking in a ranged attack with the rest of the cast. Kane is meant to be the most balanced character, and Cragger is obviously meant to be the biggest and strongest, while also being the slowest with the shortest range, too. Kane, however, is without a doubt the best character you can pick. He has insanely long range, decent attack damage, a safe, incredibly quick diving attack, and he can basically challenge every enemy in the game since attack speed seems similar for each character. Compare that to Krager, who is absolutely shit by comparison, and me saying that says a lot, since I always play big beefy characters in games like these. Krager has horrible range, and his diving attack is incredibly unsafe for some reason. Hit or block, you're just stuck sitting on your ass for a few solid seconds, just waiting to be punished. Sarah and Kronos are decent too, at least, especially considering Sarah has jumping kicks that can be comboed from, and Kronos' Blanka Ball special is actually pretty solid too. Regardless, Kain dominates everybody else in this game. I haven't mentioned it yet, but Magic unfortunately took a tiny downgrade from 2. 3 for some reason decided not to bring back the charge mechanic from 2. Even stranger, magic is also standard across every character now. No more advantages and stronger magic for someone like Sarah. Which, while not a bad thing, I do think it's kinda odd they decided to give everybody similar magic strength levels. I like the scale it used to be on, but no more, I suppose. To stay on the topic of magic, it wouldn't be a Golden Axe game if people didn't have their own rad schools of magic to use, and this one delivers in spades. Sarah Byrne uses fire, of course, and even has the rad dragon the fire users always have. Kain has water magic, once again, still a downgrade from violent explosion magic, but still pretty cool. Kronos uses what's called fog magic, but it also has lightning in it, so I don't know if that's 100% correct. And lastly, Krager uses earth magic, which basically just consists of dropping rocks on people. What else can you do with earth magic, really? Saving the best for last, though, Golden Axe 3 actually added double team attacks to the game.
Trust me.
When 2 players get close to each other on the same plane and weight, their characters will trade nods, and then you can execute a simple double team attack or a double team magic attack. These double team magic attacks are obviously super devastating, and effects-wise are some of the craziest stuff I've seen in a Golden Axe game. Water Dragon? We got that. A giant rock golem that stomps you to death? Got it. Oh yeah, how about literal death? Also, not to be outdone, crashing a sun into the earth. I thought a dragon was the best we could get, but damn, this game really brings the lumber. Versus mode is here too, with the only standout feature about it being that you can play as sub-boss Eve. Woohoo. Also returning your course are the mounts. There's this weird purple snail with a short tongue, and a green snail with a slightly longer tongue. Very exciting. And there's these 2 dragons, this yellowish one that bites and throws people over his shoulder. Terrible. And this red one, which shoots a ground wave fireball. Regrettably, there's no mention or appearance of the chicken leg whatsoever. Rest in peace, little buddy. After picking your character, you'll begin carving a path through the forces of damned Hellstrike. Location-wise, I can see why those reviewers criticize Golden Axe 3's environments. I don't think they're bad by any stretch, but they're nothing we haven't seen before. Villages, bridges, and crystal caves. Oh my. The good news is, though, the branching paths return in this game. You have 8 levels, 5 of which are split in half for different routes, which, as I always mention, gives the game some replayability. The paths also have different sub-bosses to do battle with, so they give you a unique experience with each route. Enemy-wise, though, Hellstrike has an entirely new bunch of warriors to set against you, none of them being seen in previous games. They do come in various colors, though, and some more advanced enemies will be able to bust out techniques you didn't see the softer ranks using. But the club guys have Fire Breath. The Amazons are still here, but they use maces and look way buffer now. Nice. They're also dubbed Vanity, not sure why, truth to be told. Additionally, thieves make their return, but look like tiny men instead of horrible creatures this time out. Villagers appear too, and if you rescue enough of them, you get a free life. I don't know why all of them are represented by the feminine symbol, though. I guess the skeletons could technically be counted as returning too, but they're called dead frames in this game, and they are obviously not human. More lizard man than anything. They're just as annoying and brutal as regular skeletons. They have stacked movesets, and it is crazy difficult to fight them. Long gone, though, are the long mows and the Henningers, now replaced by simple spearmen and these big tubs of lard wielding clubs. I do love the fatty's belly bump attack, though, especially with the boom sound. It's actually kind of funny to get hit by it. Knights are not fully armored, but are a bit slower than their previous incarnations when it comes to attack speed. You can actually just straight challenge a knight since their swing is always slower than yours, so just walk up and mash at them. The sub-bosses are also back and just as vicious as they used to be. Mustangs replace the bad bros and look like the offspring of the glorious Sigmar Heldenhammer. And then there's, These guys. Ego L Sheep. I fought a lot of enemies across a lot of beat 'em ups in my days, but these guys are actually ridiculous. Mainly because if you try any sort of funny moves against these Shokan goats, they lariat you instantly. How many beat 'em ups are out there that have enemies with invincible attacks like yours? And since this is a Golden Axe game where the invincible attacks cost no health, they use this attack and they use it judiciously. Running attack, lariat. Jumping attack, lariat. Spin to win. I hated fighting these guys more than the 2 real bosses in this game. Well, I guess there's 3 bosses, technically. The characters you don't select at the start of the game will appear in certain routes under Hellstrike's mind control, and beating them sets them free, of course. Outside of Kane's busted ass, they're really not too difficult to deal with, truth be told. Speaking of those 2 real bosses, the first one you'll run across is Eve, a giant man-eagle. He drops the first night you ever fight on you, and you actually fight him twice, once during your journey, and once outside Hellstrike's castle. After you beat him that second time, it turns out he was the king of Splash Hill, transformed into a beastman by Hellstrike to do his bidding. He begs you to save his daughter before God smites him for wearing his persona out in public. Shit, Hellstrike, if you could do that, why don't you just lightning me too? Must be a daily power or something. But we're here at Castle Hellstrike now. Time to carve up the last minions and face down the big man himself. He looks pretty intimidating, truth be told, but honestly, he's actually not that tough. Sure, he's built like a brick shithouse and has a pretty impressive array of moves, broad axe swing, ground magic, and even a diving attack, but he has one fatal flaw. He can't block the cross-up. Attack while jumping over him, and he gets hit every time. In fact, almost every enemy is incredibly vulnerable to this technique. Knights seem to forget they can block, and Mustangs can clip you with a running attack, but 90% of the time, you will get them. The only enemies that are immune to this are the Ego L Sheep. They just lariat you after all. You hit Hellstrike with a schmicks and he dies. You save the princess from Hellstrike's clutches, and peace returns to Splash Hill. Hooray! You head home, but as it turns out, you didn't get the axe back, so everything still sucks. Yeah, this game has a bad ending and a good ending. I looked into how to get the good ending and saw about 10 different theories, so I don't know which is the accurate one, but I got it doing this. I saved all my mind control friends, I only lost 1 continue on my way to the castle, and I didn't die during my fight with Hellstrike. If you do that, you'll be drawn back into the castle by Hellstrike.
Well, what do we have here? The heck? That's Steve! From the top of the United Center!
Who's looking a lot more greener, like Deathbringer now. He mocks you for not knowing the power of the axe, and attacks you again. He has magic attacks now, which make him a little harder, but he still can't block the cross-up. This time he dies and your character leaves, but takes a moment to scuttle back and grab the axe before zipping out of the collapsing castle. The day is saved for real this time, and peace can return to the lands. You know, heading into Golden Axe 3, I was kind of expecting the worst with the reviews I read, but honestly, this one's pretty good. Though that is coming from someone who's just happy to be away from the terrible adventure games. The additions to the game mechanics are nice, and while I don't like losing the charge magic system, I think double teams and all your other moves make up for it. The levels are nice, even if they're kinda stock, and the music? Well, the music's nice too. I think all the new enemies are great in terms of design, and only one of them is irredeemably annoying to fight. All in all, I think Golden Axe 3 is a perfectly fine addition to the franchise, much more so than Warrior and Legend were. It's not Revenge of Death Adder, obviously, but still a perfectly fine game. I don't know why reviewers were so down on it. I wouldn't have put it beneath a 7 out of 10 myself. With 3 out of the way now, tune into the next part of the Golden Axe retrospective where I get to pull double duty, a Golden Axe game that's also a fighting game. A most joyous occasion for me. As always though, I'm HadesManticore. This channel is City State Manticore. And now for something completely different, but in a good way for once in this series' lifespan.
Golden Axe, the Duel.
A fighting game of all things. Finally, a spin-off title that's in my wheelhouse. Goodbye, shitty adventure games. Hello, fun fighting games. Initially an arcade title released in Japan on January 17th, 1995, and later getting ported to the Sega Saturn on September 29th of the same year, and finally wiggling its way over to us Yanks on June 27th of 1996. The Duel actually takes place in a pre-established timeline as well, being the direct sequel to the Revenge of Death Adder. Quite the act to follow, truth be told. 80 years after the events of the Revenge of Death Adder, things have actually managed to calm down quite a bit. No tyrants, no new evil giants, no problems caused by the axe whatsoever. But good things were never meant to last forever, and the axe once again makes an appearance. This time, however, the axe is even more powerful than before. How? Well, wouldn't you be feeling refreshed after an 80-year nap? The immense power calls to people all around the world, and a bevy of warriors from all across the land come to claim its power. 10 warriors, in fact. Some familiar, some entirely new, and all desiring the axe for their own reasons. Some to claim its power for themselves, and some to steal it away for good. These 10 are your playable characters in the duel, and each of these characters have their own distinct moveset and special attacks as well. Some of them are archetypes that are easily recognizable for us fighting game fans too. Getting out of the way first thing, I played Green. He's big, he's got a command grab. He's the grappler. Simple. Green fights in the hopes that obtaining the axe will return him to his human form. Now let's go over all the characters, starting with the more familiar ones. Kane Blade is our axe battler XP for this game and is looking anime as fuck this time out. He's also the game's Shoto, Fireball, Shoryuken, and Dan Kicks. I love that if you ever played Street Fighter, you'll basically always have a similar character to play in any 2D fighting game, even this Golden Axe one. Blonde Flare, our Tyrus XP, but in stark white with pretty much no red whatsoever. Doesn't even have a red alternate costume. Weird. We also have our bearded axe-wielding dwarf in Gilius Rockhead, a blue-clad descendant of Gilius instead of green, who has the best anti-fireball move I've ever seen in a game. And then comes Death Adder, sporting his sick revenge look, of course, with the big dragon shield and everything. And that's pretty much it for familiar and at least semi-familiar faces. Technically, these are all descendants of our original heroes, but I mean, come on. The rest of the roster are completely new characters for the franchise. Zoma, a devious snake mage. I kinda like Zoma. His little skip walk gives me a good laugh every time I see it. Tiptoe by the window. He can also do it airborne. And there's Doc, an actual ninja, sporting golden flowing locks of hair, and much like his name implies, a healer from the island of Mirabar. A Dr. McNinja before there ever was a Dr. McNinja. Keel the Mad, an insane elf with water and ice-based powers. And lastly comes Jam, a young feral girl raised by the beasts of the wild, and Poncho, a big fat guy who throws bombs. I gotta say, I do love all the character designs in this game. I might compliment it too much, but everyone is very colorful and fun. The descendants of our fair heroes with their newish looks are great, invoking their ancestors without being exact duplicates. All the newbies are fantastic additions as well. I could definitely see these characters as playable or as villains in the original or any of its sequels, really. I also have to take a moment to compliment the animations in this game. Some of them look a bit weird, for sure, but overall, I think the characters and their attacks are all pretty well animated. They look nice, and that's a big plus for this game. You ever seen an ugly animated fighting game? Trust me, it's something you notice. Each of these characters also has their own distinct stage in which you fight them on. Except Jam, which I guess makes sense for a wild girl with no home, but it's weird she didn't even get like a jungle stage or something. I gotta take another moment to really compliment the stages in this game too. They look super good. I played this on Saturn for reference, and it's honestly impressive how good this game looks on console. I think it's just the Saturn's hardware though. It really was that good. All the stages are really bright and colorful, a plus for me. I keep mentioning it, but I hate when games are drab and shitty. Give me colors, please. Not to mention, they're all very alive with activity. Almost every stage is villagers cheering you on as you fight, moving grass being blown by the wind, floating platforms, and all are just alive with background activity. It's a little thing, but the best fighting games, at least in my opinion, always have really lively stages. Also, a big shout out to this game for including our humble chicken leg as a background character. Shame on Golden Axe for not including him. Though I'm not sure how I feel about the Tin Woman with tits and Poncho's stage, and there seems to be one locked away behind the door right here as well. Poncho's has a sense of humor, I'm told, but I gotta be honest, Sex Doll is a bit weird. And for all I know, that locked away Tin Man was his last Sex Doll who gained sentience and tried to escape, but is now locked away for all eternity. You'll battle through these characters and their stages with the game's sub-boss being the big bad himself, Death Adder. An interesting note about Death Adder is, much like in Revenge, you can break his shield and he loses access to all the moves related to it. I started losing the Fireball special though. I don't know if it has an effect on his defense or something like Vega in Street Fighter when he loses his mask. Other characters have the flash on blocks too, which makes me think maybe they had losable parts as well, but it was probably cut for time or something. Mechanically, Golden Axe the duel functions pretty similarly to Street Fighter 2, or maybe Samsho would be more appropriate since it features weapons for a majority of the characters. It's a 6-button fighter, 3 punches and 3 kicks of varying strengths of course. Combos definitely exist, and characters can be juggled as well. You also have a backdash for mobility and a full tilt run for forward mobility. Every character has specials, too. Duh, what would a fighting game be without them? Green, for instance, has a command dash that can end with an uppercut, a sick backbreaker command grab, and a move where he spins his arms at you.
You get hit, it's your own fault.
Uniquely, Golden Axe the Duel has this little power meter here, which is filled by collecting magical pots, which you get by smacking around Golden Axe mainstays, the thieves. This time out though, they're looking a little more furry than normal. Weird. Anyway, collect enough pots and you'll be able to activate your power-up mode, which increases your damage for a limited time and allows you to execute your super move. Some of them are pretty impressive looking. Gameplay-wise, Duel is incredibly fast-paced and frenetic. Even someone like Green moves quickly. It's insane, though I do have the command dash. Regardless, the Duel is like playing Super Turbo in a Golden Axe-themed world. Look, even my standing light kick has crazy forward momentum. Green's a master of the toe crusher, apparently. Not even to be outdone by that, though. Green was actually a pretty insane character overall. I don't know about how the characters in this game are tiered, since, well, I didn't really sit down and plot out all 10, but man, Green is strong. All of his pokes are pretty insane, but especially his crouching medium punch, this reach-out backhand here. Good range on this thing, so I used it pretty liberally in my learning stages. Not even just the pokes make Green really good too, though. What really makes Green broken is his command dash. It has insane range, it's completely invincible to strikes and projectiles, it's safe so you can just throw it out while holding back and be unpunishable, and it has an uppercut ender that's totally safe too, and it can lead into a juggle if it connects. I might be making assumptions on the move's safety since it's not like I have a reliable way to test this, admittedly, but this is a fighting game AI we're talking about. If I was unsafe doing something, I would get punished every time. But I could just command dash all day on the AI. Once I learned this, basically everybody but Death Adder was a breeze. In fact, my main strategy in my Green arcade run was to just command dash into regular grab. If I wasn't so dogshit at doing 360s on a Saturn controller, I could probably have just command dashed into backbreaker all day. Anyway, arcade mode is the main way of play here. You'll fight all 10 playable characters with Death Adder as a sub-boss, and after you defeat him, you'll move on to the final boss.
Duel 1.
The Golden Axe itself, now in golem form. Admittedly, I'm kinda sad it isn't just a floating axe you have to fight. The Golden Axe will only hand himself over to the one he deems worthy, and the only way to be deemed worthy is by whooping his ass. After he clobbers yours a bunch, clearly. Much like every arcade run and almost every fighting game ever, Golden Axe rewards you with a unique ending for each character. The good guys generally use the axe to protect their families and kingdoms. Kane and Milan do this, and Doc actually uses the axe to cure illnesses and disease around the world. Alternatively, they get rid of it entirely, such as the case with Gilius, who buries the axe in the earth so it can never be found again, or Jam, who does essentially the same thing. Green opts to forsake being returned to a human form and just feckin' hucks the thing into the ocean. On the flip side, evil characters tend to use the axe for their own ambitions. Death Adder just straight conquers the entire world. Zoma creates a potion that will grant him ultimate power, after it ferments for 100 years for some reason. And Ponchos just makes a suit of armor out of the axe and becomes ruler of his own kingdom. Most unique among the endings, though, is Keel, who, after acquiring the axe, has his madness disappear entirely and can live in peace now, having forgotten the atrocities he's committed. Unlike me, I have to live with what I've done. So yeah, let's wrap this double duty episode of CSM up. A Golden Axe retrospective bit, and a ranking on the search for the worst fighting game. Let's do the fighting game part first real quick. I think I'll honestly be putting Golden Axe the Duel as the new number 3. I'll admit, I'm probably a bit biased since this is the Golden Axe title, but I had a ton of fun playing this game. The characters are fun and interesting design-wise, the stages are gorgeous, the attacks are well animated, and the gameplay is tight and responsive too. Sure, it does take a lot of notions from Street Fighter, but is copying one of the best fighting game franchises out there really a bad thing? This is the type of game that probably still has a dedicated community somewhere still playing it to this day. As for being a Golden Axe title, well, I think this one's awesome. Better than the last few I've reviewed, that's for sure. Everything in this game just fits really well with the Golden Axe world and its barbarian swords and sorcery aesthetic. A welcome addition to the Golden Axe family, unlike these redheaded stepchildren. Hurrah! A game outside the realm of beat-em-ups that's actually good for once. Anywho, We're actually starting to close in on the end of this little retrospective, with just 2 or 3 titles left to look at, I believe. As always, my name is HadesManticore. This here channel is City State Manticore. I had no idea this game existed until I was doing research for this very retrospective. Sega Ages Golden Axe is a complete remake of the original Golden Axe that was released in Japan on September 25th of 2003. Huh. Sega, once again, way ahead of the curve with remakes of classic games. Seems like Sega was a bit ahead of the times in the gaming industry between this and a subscription-based video game service. Anyway, to give a little context to what the Sega Ages project is, well, basically it was a series of remakes and ports of classic Sega games. It included titles like Space Harrier, Gain Ground, and Fantasy Zone on top of Golden Axe, which is why we're here, obviously. These remakes were made and released in Japan as budget titles for various consoles over the years. Sega Ages actually began its life back on the Sega Saturn and continues to this very day with the Nintendo Switch. Its name is also a palindrome. Our current video, though, brings us specifically to the Sega Ages 2500 series, a set of games released for the PlayStation 2 for the budget price of 2,500 yen, roughly 22 bucks in freedom dollars if you were curious. All the 2500 project titles, including Golden Axe, were released individually in Japan, but due to complications with Sony Computer Entertainment of America, they were unable to be sold as such across the world. So, Sega slapped 9 of these titles into one disc, called it the Sega Classics Collection, and sold it in the USA in 2005 and Europe in 2006. So of course, I got my grubby little hands on a copy of this collection just for the updated Golden Axe. Let's take a look at this weird little remake, shall we? Sega Ages Golden Axe hits you with the story of the game straight off the bat, with a fairly lengthy cutscene, by Golden Axe standards at least. In the past, the gods inhabited and ruled over Earth, but then, the Titans came and decided the gods were dum-dum doo-doo heads and began a massive war to take the planet from them and install themselves as rulers of the Earth. The lands were nearly destroyed by this war, but the gods managed to pull the fat W out against the Titans and exterminate them to the last man, mostly thanks to the power of the Golden Axe. Time moved on and the gods eventually vanished from the face of the earth, though they did leave behind the axe for humanity just in case some bad shit happens. Things were going just swell until the last Titan, Death Adder, reels his ugly head and steals the axe from humanity, intent on claiming all the power of the axe for himself. Once again, our 3 heroes, Tyrus Flare, Axe Battler, and Gilius Thunderhead take up arms to slay the evil Titan and restore peace to the lands. Unknown if Death Adder killed our heroes' family members in this canon, though. Or Alex, for that matter. You're promptly dumped into a menu thereafter and given the modes of play. You have 1-player, 2-player arcade, and survival. I just played arcade since, well, what else do you do in a beat-em-up, really? Pick a hero and jump into the game to save the lands from Death Adder once again. The Sega Ages version still functions fundamentally the same as any other Golden Axe game, really. You have a combo you mash out, walk, run, jumping attack, falling attack, and your back attack, too. Your back attack is now mapped to only 1 button, and in addition to a running attack, you have a slide now, which, I don't know, it's something, I guess. Magic makes its return too. What would a Golden Axe game be without it? Tyrus maintains her fire magic, and Gilius has thunder once again, but Axe gets earth-based magic instead of his classic explosion magic. I just don't want this guy to have explosion magic anymore for some reason. Everybody has the same magic levels as the first one. The only new thing here is killing an enemy now gives you a tiny bit of magical power, so you no longer have to rely on just magic pot pickups anymore. It's actually a fairly nice little change, since it lets you be a little more loose with your magic usage. The magic effects are also... It's weird. I feel like the effects in the original games were stellar, but these are just kind of uninspiring. Maybe I just missed the dragon being gigantic like in the original, as opposed to just a normal-sized dragon in this one. I guess the thunder magic is a bit better, though, that's for sure. You know, a little cream will help clear that right up. Character balance is once again all out of whack, though. If you're familiar with how the heroes were typically bounced in Golden Axe, it was like this. Tyrus has the best magic and the worst attack range, on top of the weakest attack power. Axe is the middle of the road, and Gilius has bad magic, with the longest range and highest damage melee attack. Magic sliding scale is still the same, but now Gilius has the shortest range and slowest attack speed. Meanwhile, Axe's range is stupid long with his claymore, and while her range is shorter, Tyrus has the fastest attack speed, meaning she can blow up pretty much every enemy in the game before they can even swipe at her. So playing Gilius here is completely pointless. Enemy-wise, all the usual suspects return. Longmuns, Henningers, the evil Amazons, and Skeleton Warriors, of course, make up all the flunkies you can cut through with pretty much ease. The Bad Brothers and the Bitter Knights also rear their ugly heads too as the bosses of levels. The Thieves also make their return this time out, and much like the Duel, are a bit more furry as opposed to their formerly humanoid look. Surprisingly, the game also adds Spearmen from Golden Axe 3 as a normal foe too, alongside the Minotaurs from Golden Axe 2 as well. I like the variety. Hard to hate it, really. The only new enemy here are the Mages, which which I want to say are inspired by the ones from 2, but these ones float and use way stronger magic to attack you with. Mounts are back too. Duh, it's Golden Axe. The chicken leg and the blue dragon being as they were originally, but the pink dragon is now orange for some reason. The blue dragon's flame is also way more broken now. Look how big this area of effect is.
That's quite big.
And the fireball from the orange goes the whole screen. It's actually pretty broken. The chicken leg is okay, but holy shit, what a lazy looking tail swipe animation. It's literally just the model turning suddenly. Bizarrians also flee during cutscenes. Didn't want to keep that blue dragon at all, thank you very much, game. The levels from this remake are also ripped straight from the original, basically, obviously with a lot of alterations for a more updated console. The levels, alongside the character models, are ugly as shit. Time to stop feigning positivity now, because I can't lie, this game is rough. Everything is just so flat, blocky, and low res. What the hell's going on here? The original game wasn't this flat, and it was 2D. The models also don't look particularly good either. Look at the wings on this eagle. It doesn't even look like a wing at all. It's just a massive block of fuzzy brown nonsense. The only positive I can note is that Tyrus has abs, and that's a hard yes for me. Axe has more of a Conan look, which is fair, considering Golden Axe was completely inspired by it after all. There's also this, like, weird blur over everything. I ran this on a PS2 for reference, native hardware, and it was just blurry. Like someone slathered Crisco all over my monitor. I could barely make out the names half the time. Occasionally levels will be broken up by a cutscene, which helps to flesh out certain areas since the map screen that would help you tell the story is completely gone now. The problem with the cutscenes is that 1, they're not voiced at all, and 2, the model's lips don't move, which kinda makes it just kinda look awkward. Really weird though, is the elf kicking minigame is only in cutscene form now. You no longer get to reveal yourself between levels by playing everybody's favorite game. Why? I want to play Kick the Manlet. The levels are even worse than normal, since outside the last levels in the game, there are no pitfalls to take advantage of. So you have to kill every enemy manually instead of cheesing the stupid AI by walking them off cliffs, or even just throwing them off cliffs. That's no fun. Also not helping the levels is how poorly paced they all really are. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but levels have a bad habit of just dragging on with the sheer amount of enemy spawns you have to deal with in each segment. Magic effects also just take twice as long to go through for some reason. Look at this comparison. I don't think this helps with the dragging problem that I've mentioned before. It gets a little boring, especially with how bad the combat is. Yeah, they screwed up the combat and a beat 'em up, and pretty bad too. I didn't think that was possible, but here we are. Outside your basic slash combo, every move you do has a noticeable delay on execution. In older Golden Axe games, for instance, you could execute a running attack on like frame 1 once you double tap the run motion. Not here. There's like a 0.5 second delay before your character goes into the attack animation. This is also the same with your jumping and falling attacks too. Your jumping attacks also have this awkward bit of forward momentum, which can throw you off your target pretty easily. Normal jump attacks are also capped to 1 strike only, instead of being mashable like in the first. So you no longer have a good jumping get off me attack, and have to rely on your back attack for that. The slide attack, I never even bothered using. No point to it. At least I didn't think so. Oh, also, Axe has the only good back attack. Gilius has a nice roll attack for his back attack, but you can't hit anybody with it, like, at all. Your normal combo is basically all you ever really want to use, since it's not bogged down by any weird delay. The only problem with your full combo is if you throw your opponent, this game has replicated the old glitch where you can get stuck throwing nobody. This happened all the time. Of all the things you brought back from the original, you brought this back? At least you're invincible for the whole throw, so you aren't vulnerable. That's nice. What does help the combat go a little smoother, though, is how absurd your attack hitboxes are. Look at this. Tyrus and Axe both have a little Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Virgil in them for sure. Actually, even better than using your full combo or abusing your stupid hitboxes is hitting the target once, waiting a second, then hitting them again. This actually effectively stun locks whoever you're attacking until you can finish them with a full combo. But you know what? Out of all the stuff I've described so far, none of that is even the worst part of this game. Let me tell you what is the worst part of this game. The slowdown. Holy shit. If there's ever more than 3 enemies on the screen, the game will slow down. Hit 2 enemies at once, creating 2 hit sparks, slow down. 2 mages casting spells, slow down. Cast your spell, slow down, but I don't know if it's intentional here or not. All of these things tank the game's frame rate. It's ridiculous. This actually got so bad during the final boss fight, I was barely able to scrap out the W. Surprisingly, it's hard to fight Death Adder and 6 flunkies at once while at 10 frames per second. It was so frustrating. Did nobody test or optimize this game at all? Watching through the credits, not a single tester to be seen here. A lot of support staff, but no testers. Guess this one had 0 done whatsoever. That would explain a lot, actually. Budget title left no room for testing, I guess. Jesus Christ. So, I'll just wrap this up. Heroes kill Death Adder, and peace is restored. Hooray. Boy, I wish I could go back to not knowing about this game. Cards on the table. Sega Ages Golden Axe is terrible. It's ugly. The balance is completely screwed up. Half your moveset is gimped by random nonsense. The environments are flat and blocky like this is a Minecraft mod, and the constant slowdown is incredibly jarring and game ruining. It's not even particularly fun either is the problem. The combat being so bad and the levels dragging on for so long, on top of the more fun stuff like throwing your enemies into pits being gone, means the experience is just a boring drag. Even though a playthrough will only take an hour, it feels way longer. The sounds are also just not as fun as the original. Yeah, you probably couldn't get away with stealing sound clips these days, but you could still bit crush the crap out of them for the hilarity. Hell, Death Adder has a bit crush scream near the end. Why not everybody else? I guess if there's any positives about this game that I could bring up, it'd be, I guess the music's alright. I don't think any of the tracks here are better than the originals, but they tried to epic the songs up a little bit, if you understand what I mean. Also, the last level where you fight Death Adder at's pretty cool. I like all the snakes. This is definitely the worst beat-em-up in the Golden Axe franchise. Worst game? I don't know. That's probably still one of the awful adventure games. But after putting this one to bed, we have come to the climax of our little Golden Axe retrospective. Stick around for the review of Golden Axe Beast Rider, everybody, the last official title ever created in the Golden Axe line. Can't wait. But as always though, my name is HadesManticore, and this here little channel is City State Manticore. And so, my friends, the Golden Axe retrospective comes down to this. The final official release in the Golden Axe series. Golden Axe Beast Rider. The end of Golden Axe, as we know it. You know, I'd never actually played this game back when it first came out in 2008. I saw the negative reception it received from both official review outlets and from gamers alike, and I just didn't bother. I didn't want to see something I loved torn down and perverted like this. But now it's 2021, and everything I've ever loved has been torn down and perverted in horrifying ways, so here we are. At a glance, I mean, it looks okay. Fundamentally, it was still a barbarian hack-and-slash adventure starring a batty redhead warrior woman. How could it go so wrong? Well, now is the time I roll up my sleeves and get down and dirty with this game. Was it really as bad as I was led to believe? Or is Beast Rider some diamond in the rough? Something potentially misunderstood or treated unfairly back during its release? During my investigations, I found out that Beast Rider had a fairly typical start for its development cycle. Sega wanted to bring back a long-dormant franchise and revitalize it into a major player in the late 2000s gaming landscape. The series ended up being Golden Axe, of course, and the project was handed to developers Secret Level Incorporated. At the time, a fairly small studio that had tackled a couple port jobs for Sega and developed a small amount of games themselves as well. Secret Level developed a slice of a new Golden Axe for Sega, and Sega, being so impressed by that bit, ended up immediately purchasing the studio and redubbing them Sega Studio San Francisco. Secret Level also began developing their own tool set for the new Golden Axe, and their studio quickly went from a small 5-man team to over 150 employees, and apparently this is where all the troubles began for Golden Axe Beast Rider. Beast Rider, unfortunately, had quite the troubled development. The game originally did have a bit of a broader scope, including a more in-depth fighting system, multiple playable characters, and cooperative multiplayer modes as well. But a nightmarish confluence of inexperienced new team members, mismanagement, having to develop a second game midway through Beast Rider's development, and a terrible lack of communication between in-house development staff and outsourced teams led the project to become over-budgeted and bogged down in the quagmire of bad game development. But even with all these assorted troubles, the team at Sega San Francisco managed to buckle down and clutch out both Golden Axe Beast Rider and Iron Man too. But enough about backgrounds, you're here to learn about the game, not what made it, I'm sure. Golden Axe Beast Rider is a near total reboot of the series. Outside of the original game's 3 main characters, the antagonist, and a few references sprinkled throughout, everything has been remade totally. Enemies, locations, monsters, and lore are all brand spanking new. The main character of Beast Rider is series staple Tyrus Flare. Still a cut beastly warrior woman, but with a few changes. No longer an Amazon, Tyrus now hails from the island of Exir and is a member of the Exirian Sisterhood, an order of warrior women and priestesses who worship the Great Dragon. She now also sports flaming red locks of hair and pants. Sexy pants, like a Yame from Tenchu. I'll bring it up now. There's a lot of ass in this game, man and woman. Billy Gunn would be proud of this game for sure. The game begins with Tyrus being late for a very important date. The Sisterhood is summoning the Great Dragon to try to stop the incredibly powerful Death Adder. While tearing ass to get to the ritual grounds, Tyrus runs into the game's combat tutorial against the most basic enemy of the game, the Grubber, a simple club-wielding foe with serrated teeth. Here, you're taught about the game's mechanics. You have light attacks, heavy attacks, and a knockback attack to tell your foes to get the fuck back and guard your grill. Your quick and strong strikes can be mixed up for different combination attacks, some with the ability to knock foes up and others to strike in a circle or something. The combos here really aren't too in-depth, truth be told, and most of the time you'll just be doing light, and maybe heavy if you're one-on-one with someone. You're also quickly taught the defensive mechanics of the game. You have a dodge and a parry, which are used to counter enemy attacks, which are indicated with a massive glowing orange, blue, or green light. A red light just means move, bitch, get out the way. Parry also allows you to reflect magical bolts back at enemy spellcasters. Later video games would streamline this counter defense down to one button to counter everything. Successfully executing a dodge or a parry will also enhance your next attack, granting it more damage and a nice fiery effect. It also obviously nullifies any damage an attack might have done to you, so it pays to drill these defensive techniques into your brain. Evading damage also builds your Titan meter, which boosts your money gaining and grants you special bonuses like insta-kills or magic regeneration. Useful stuff to reward a proper play. Parry can also produce a graphic kill, which has a little cutscene where Tyrus does a sweet little kill move to whatever foe she's targeting. These graphic kills grant you bonus money. Dismembering your enemies also gives you extra bonus money at the end of a level, too, so you want to commit as much violence as you possibly can, hacking every enemy you find to bits. I like the violence, it appeals to my lizard brain. You want to try to be as flashy and flawless as possible too, since more points will allow you to unlock better weapons later on. Good combat practices are not required to win though. I mean, I beat this game and I was terrible at this system. Back to the story though, Tyrus cleaves through a bunch of geeks and hurries ever forward to the ritual site. Thankfully, she runs into the game's chicken leg analog and yet another tutorial, this time on beast riding. Beast riding is an integral bit to this game, it being Golden Axe Beast Rider after all. And this game isn't lacking in the beasts. Gone though are the familiar chicken leg and dragons of the past, in their place one weird facsimile and the Abrax and a bunch of new ones. Ranging in size from the humble Linth to the monstrous Megabrax, all of these vicious creatures feature a simple mashable combo on top of a more specialized attack or utility-based ability. Beasts are pretty damn useful because they hit really hard and are basically a second life bar for you, on top of the fact that if you're mounted on a beast and take damage, you don't lose your Titan meter bonus. So most of the time you'll be using your beast as a meat shield battering ram against Adder's minions, as well as occasionally using them for puzzle solving. More on that later. Tyrus rides to the ritual site where the Great Dragon's being currently summoned by her sisters. Tyrus is imbued with the power of fire magic by the dragon just before Adder's minions launch an assault on the ritual site. The Great Dragon is captured by the first and second born, and while attempting to help, Tyrus gets knocked the fuck out.
Behind you, girl!
Great hero right there. She comes to a bit later, hot as hell and pissed off about all her dead friends. She slaughters some goons and activates a teleporter, escaping the ritual site to the DR Highlands, where she meets up with Gilius once again. He drops the best line in the game.
By my balls, girl! I thought you were dead!
And announces that the only way they can beat Death Adder now is by putting together the pieces of the legendary Golden Axe. He has two pieces already conveniently, and he hands them over to Tyrus, citing that it's her destiny as the last Exirian sister to kill Death Adder, and he'll rescue the Great Dragon while she puts together the axe. So now you have the game's overarching questline. Put together the axe, kill Death Adder. Simple. Oh, and the axe is its own usable weapon too, though for the most part you just throw it. You won't really use it as a weapon too much though, you'll mostly just be throwing it at glowing axe icons, which unlock areas you can't get to yet. You won't be using it as a weapon since the axe is way too slow to draw and draw a beat on your enemies. Not to mention the cursor is pretty damn wacky and moves super quick, making it even more difficult to aim properly. You'll also have access to your magical attacks at this point. Beast Rider still maintains the magical pot system for casting, but now you have a handful of abilities to use in battle instead of just one sliding scale. Some of these abilities you'll unlock over the course of the game. Maybe. You'll start off with a simple fireball for blasting foes and a little pyre AoE attack to get everybody off you if you need it. Later on, you'll work your way to more powerful attacks and even getting a big clear-out dragon attack that costs all 6 of your pot. It's a pretty nice effect, admittedly. Also, I said maybe when it comes to learning these. I have to be honest that the first time I ever did that big dragon AoE culling attack was before I even learned the input to do it. So potentially you have all your magic unlocked by default, you just have to know the inputs to perform them. Pots, though, I found to be kind of scarce, so I barely ever used magic even. Magic I use mostly for, you guessed it, puzzle solving. So now that I've mentioned it the magic amount of times that it takes to make me talk about something, it's time to talk about the last major part of this game alongside combat and beast riding, light puzzle solving. A lot of the time to open up an area where you need to go, you'll often have to do an insanely mundane little puzzle, something like hitting a pillar, shooting a pillar with a fireball, hitting an axe silhouette with a golden axe, or parking a beast on a switch. Incredibly fun stuff that every game should have, clearly. All these puzzles are lame as hell, and really only serve to drag the game out for a bit of extra time. It can drag even more if you have to do a beast switch puzzle and the beast you spawn for it dies and you have to run all the way back to the spawner to get another one and then run all the way back to activate the switch again. They really should have just cut these boring ass puzzles and replaced it with more of the mediocre combat. Let's get back to the mediocre story though as a change of pace, I mean. Tyrus carves her way through Adder's forces in the DR Highlands, running into more and more of Death Adder's tougher minions. Let's talk about the enemies in this game for a moment. The enemies are nearly all new in this game and pretty much all sport far more barbaric looks for the most part, something more fitting for this game's aesthetics of course. I already mentioned the grubbers, but there's also the boogeymen, who are bigger chaos marauder looking guys. They also have an even bigger variant which takes more punishment, alongside a smaller variant which enrages nearby grubbers when he dies. The bitter knights are also here, which is a nice reference to the first game. They are all tanky warriors who can be even tankier if they have a shield. There is also an even bigger bitter knight variant which takes more damage. There's a lance variant too, which exists to knock you off beasts basically, and to scream and charge at you. There's also a handful of mages in this game that oppose you. From the normal barbarian guys who shoot parryable lightning bolts or just drop rocks on you. Then there's these sexy lady mages who have this really annoying pulse attack that they use every time you get anywhere close to them. And you have these thuggy looking guys that summon skeletons and can blink away from you to escape your attacks. The skeletons are here too. I appreciate their inclusion since skellies are a Golden Axe classic after all. And also, as they fall apart, they still come at you with no limbs or no torso even. It's a cute touch. I like stuff like that. There's also a handful of unwritable monsters that you have to fight in this game, including these weird little dirt worms and this giant bone thief looking monster. There's also a few ghost variants of normal enemies. They're really nothing special. The only special ghosts are these floaty revenant looking guys who, while not particularly intimidating, are actually pretty cool. Ah, and before you ask, yes, of course the thieves return again, but this time they're looking a little absolutely hideous. I take back the shit I talked about the furry variants from previous games. This is way worse. Thieves still pop up just to get beat up for supplies, them dropping pots, meats, and now money too. The game uses an updated version of their old theme too, which is nice, but it's a more jovial tune. It seems very out of place in this gritty, bloody game. There are also now kamikaze gnomes, which suicide bomb you, or try to at least, since one swipe from you sends them away and blowing up. Also, they're really not that intimidating since they don't do much damage anyway. I've always blamed Halo for the rise in kamikaze enemies. Beyond the skeletons, the strongest basic foes are the sexy snake women that have apparently been spawned from Death Adder's ballsack. You know, if I existed in this game, I'd betray Tyrus for a snack waifu, all I'm saying.
Oh, sweet Lord! Clean peaches and heavy syrup!
All in all, it's an okay cast of villains, but nothing that really sticks out outside the hot snake women. But what about the bosses, huh? Well, fortunately, the first one is right here at the end of the DR Highlands. The Firstborn, one of the titans that took the Great Dragon, and oh boy, it's a pretty mediocre experience. You dodge his attacks, and then you wail on him till he stumbles, and you kick him into a pillar. That's it. After Tyrus beats the Firstborn, she heads out to the Titan Wastelands to collect more pieces of the axe, which you find more pieces after some more killing and some more light puzzle solving. Tyrus thusly heads to the grave of the Turtle Titan to get more pieces, but has a brief run-in with Axe Battler, named Tariq in this game. Tariq now hails from the frozen Northlands and hasn't ever met Tyrus or Gilius before. His home has been suffering from a bunch of natural disasters, and he's come down south to figure out why this is happening. Tariq drops a cryptic warning to Tyrus.
Be prepared to finish what you have started, Axarian.
Before fucking off for the rest of the story. Much like Gilius, Tariq just kinda vanishes for a while. Now that we're more than halfway through the game, I have to point out how lame these levels are in terms of design. Everything is just brown, 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 brown. Barely a primary color to be seen anywhere. There are some cool set pieces amongst all this brown. I mean, I like the Turtle Titan bones popping up in the background, but other than that, everything is just very dull and drab. The climax of the Turtle Titan level, you fight another boss, the Secondborn, which is very similar to the Firstborn. You need to wail on him till he falls and then kick him into a pillar. This is complicated though by the swarm of skeleton warriors ass blasting you the whole time. The Secondborn also has a way more annoying moveset than his brother, but the real problem is all these asshole skeletons attacking you. It's time to bitch about the combat in this game. In short, it's not very good. For the most part, you're just going to be pressing light, 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 or heavy, heavy, heavy to do your fighting. The only useful combination otherwise is light, heavy, which pops a foe up so you can keep wailing on them for extra damage. You are constantly being swarmed by foes in this game as well, which means if you want to try to use the defensive mechanics, which will help you destroy groups somewhat easier, you have to keep your head on a swivel at all times with a very unhelpful camera fighting you the whole way. Otherwise, you just light, 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 since Tyrus's light, light, light does a nice circular attack to clear people out with. Also, the defensive systems behave oddly. Without an orange attack heading her way, if Tyrus attempts a dodge, she'll just do this awkward little sidestep. She'll roll fully if she does a dodge, but otherwise it's just this awkward little do-si-do for some reason. The AI also has this weird tendency to just break. I can recall a handful of times where the AI just stopped working and stood there. It was really weird. The absolute worst part about the combat in this game, though, is just every enemy is a huge sack of HP. You wail on them and you wail on them, but they just take forever to die sometimes. Especially the Bitter Knights. My god, you have to hack their armor off first, and then you have to hit them 30 times, and then they'll die. The remedy to this would be to have more damaging weapons available to you, but you don't get to use your extra weapons on a first playthrough. They're locked into this challenge mode, which is really just a new game plus, and the Trials of Tyrus, which is just a bunch of gauntlet matches. It also doesn't help that it costs a fucking obnoxious amount of money to unlock these weapons. Holy hell. Maybe if I was better at this game, I'd be getting more money, but look at the amounts you need for these. Maybe playing on a harder difficulty for a second run would also help, but I was sick of this game about 3 hours into it. I don't want to play this on a harder difficulty. All the higher difficulties do anyway is just make you die easier, and the hardest difficulty even turns off the flashing indicators for counters. Gee, that sounds like so much fun. I just want to do it right now. Anyway, after you successfully kill the Secondborn, Tyrus jumps into the City of the Dead and has to hack through all the ghosts in the area to meet up with the Queen of the Dead, who has a piece of the axe, and is Death Adder's main hoe, so she's not giving up that piece easily. Her boss fight isn't really inspired either, you just whoop her ass, and occasionally she splits into two, and you have to find out which is the real one by hitting it. I forgot to mention during this fight, the Queen will occasionally hide behind a force field, and you have to break it by throwing the golden axe at some axe icons to make her fight you again. Fun. After her, you've assembled the whole of the golden axe, but it's still not complete. Oh well, Tyrus heads to the Fiend's Path to rescue the Great Dragon, since Gilius has been MIA since he promised to do that. This is where the hot snake women started appearing, so that gave me the strength to keep going on. Carve through more enemies and you arrive at the penultimate boss fight. Both of the Titans from earlier, which you can only harm after killing the Snake Women who are currently channeling magic on the Great Dragon. This is just basically a super dragged out fight since it takes upwards of 4 downs to kill each giant. Not to mention that the Snake Women also respawn on occasion, so you have to kill them first, and then you can focus on the Titans. After they're finally actually killed, Tyrus frees the Great Dragon, who reveals to her that the last part of the Golden Axe is his soul, and she has to kill him to complete the axe. She whinges about it for a bit, since that is her god after all, but ends up doing it at his urging. Axe in hand, Tyrus heads for the final confrontation with Death Adder. I like the run up to Adder, since every enemy literally just explodes when Tyrus gets close to them. It really shows off the power of this legendary weapon for sure. Finally, you come face to face with the big man himself. Death Adder is...
Now, mortal, you will know what it means to despair. Foolish woman, behold your doom.
actually pretty cool looking in this game. They melded his old warrior look with a more serpent look, giving him scales under his nice green armor, one of the few colors in this game. You wail on Adder for a bit, and then he just decides to steal the axe from you. Just sucks it right out of your hand. You could do that? What the hell? It doesn't really matter though, since you beat on him some more, then you kick him into a vortex that does massive damage to him. After a couple of these kickings, you head into phase 2. Adder mutates into his true form here, shedding the armor plating and changing into a monstrous serpent beast that looks like a cross of a King Cobra and Goro from Mortal Kombat. You wail on him some more, eventually causing him to drop to his belly and summon magic to regenerate himself. Get this part though. You have to destroy the fonts above with the axe, and then you have to mount Death Adder like he's one of the beasts and use him to destroy the pillars totally so he can't fully regenerate anymore. How does that work exactly? This isn't fucking Ratatouille, he doesn't want me guiding him. This makes no sense, but I guess Adder couldn't say no to being mounted by Tyrus. Who could, really? After the pillars are destroyed and you empty his life bar one final time, a cutscene ensues. Adder says you're a punk bitch who will submit to him, and Tyrus says, maybe later, and hurls the axe at him, cleaving his head off in one well-placed blow. The tyrant is slain. The Great Dragon pops back in to pat Tyrus on the back and to let her know her service to him isn't finished yet. Tyrus changes into her classic outfit for the final cutscene, which is honestly pretty funny. I forgot to mention earlier, but you unlock outfits for Tyrus as you advance through the game, them all being related to the game's various areas, with the ultimate outfit you unlock being her classic Golden Axe 1 attire. I'm happy they included the throwback outfit, but it was something that probably should have been rewarded to you after the credits roll, truth be told. Mainly because it's kind of jarring to see Tyrus change from her modern leather top, pants, and armor combo to her battle bikini from the first game. I actually bust a gut laughing the first time I saw this. Tyrus meets up with Gilius outside the Fiend's Path, who congratulates her for killing Adder, but the party is crashed by Tariq, who informs us that Adder's death has only unleashed the other Titans that he kept in check, and the three form an uneasy alliance as the game ends on a cliffhanger. A cliffhanger that was never followed up on because Beast Rider fucking bombed. And now I see why. Really, Gilius sums up my feelings on this game pretty well.
Blood and shit.
Golden Axe Beast Rider is a very dull, messy game. Combat is functional at best, the levels are incredibly boring with few high spots to mention. The beast mechanic is really nothing more than a meat shield mount that controls like absolute garbage. Enemy designs waffle from being boring to pretty cool, but they're all just sacks of hit points that you need to wail on for way too long. Boss fights aren't fun either, and with how unsatisfying everything was, I never really even bothered trying to unlock later game weapons. So all in all, a very dull, crappy experience I put myself through for nothing more than the love of this franchise. This would obviously be the end of Golden Axe as we know it. Aside from some cameos in other games and some Storm collectible statues which look pretty sweet, Golden Axe has never seen another entry in the franchise. This was a fairly depressing end to a franchise that meant a lot to me growing up. And well, I guess we're at the end of this little journey. Well, actually, something new got dropped pretty recently, so I guess I'll have to take a quick peek at that before I can call this retrospective totally finished. As always, though, my friends, my name is HadesManticore, and this here channel is City State Manticore. So, we reached the disastrous climax of the Golden Axe retrospective, and what do you know? While I was working on it, Sega dropped a never-before-seen bit of Golden Axe history. Dropped during their 60th anniversary celebration, what Sega dubbed as Golden Axed. A simple vertical slice of what was supposed to be a new age Golden Axe video game. It was nothing more than a one-level demo developed by Sega Australia all the way back in 2012. Let's get the unfortunate bit of Golden Axed out of the way first. Axed was born from developmental crunch at Sega Australia as shared by developer Tim Dawson. They crunched out Axe over a 2-week period while working 14-hour days the entire time. And unfortunately it was all for nothing, as we never knew anything about this game until 2020. Regardless, let's take a look at this little slice of lost history. Axe is a 2.5D beat-em-up style game with more gritty aesthetics, kinda similar to Beast Rider, but admittedly not as extreme as that one. You get to play as this guy, assumedly Axe Battler since he's building the Claymore and he does a shoulder block attack too. You move pretty quickly, have a light combo and a heavy combo to slay your foes with, and while there is a magic bar, magic attacks were absent in this demo, unfortunately. You also spill blood pretty copiously with every slash too, so that's fun. I feel like blood and higher levels of violence work really well with Golden Axe. You'll spend the whole of this 7-minute demo hacking through these long moan looking fellers until you eventually come face to face with Death Adder, who rises from his throne to fight you just as the demo ends. This was a fun little demo. It would have been nice to see this one come to fruition so Beast Rider wouldn't be the last Golden Axe game. It is an obvious shame how this game was born though, so let's switch over to something different so I can end this retrospective on a high note at least, instead of a low one. Golden Axe Myth. Yet another fan game developed with the OpenBOR engine, so it's doubly appropriate to review on this channel. Developed by a dedicated fan team from Argentina, Myth is a prequel game attempting to set the stage of Golden Axe just before the first one begins. Story-wise, the Empire of the Joined Lands is a powerful nation that rules over the lands of Uria, and has been doing so peacefully for generations now. But as evil tends to do, it rises up in the form of an unnamed Titan from Uria's history. Fortunately, the Council had the Golden Axe to protect it. Unfortunately, the Titan tricked the Council and stole the axe from them. Thankfully, the 4 greatest heroes in the land team up to get the axe back and restore peace to the nation. The Council backs these warriors up by teaching them an elemental magic, and the fearsome foursome head out on their oh-so-noble quest. These 4 are, of course, your playable characters for Myth, and they're all familiar faces. Beefcake Barbarian Axe Battler and his earth magic, Amazonian War Princess Tyrus Flare and her fearsome fire magic, magic, Stout Dwarven Warrior Gilius Thunderhead in the classic lightning magic, and, very surprisingly, Death Adder rounds out the 4-man crew. Apparently a Bishi boy under that helmet, Adder sports a massive flare and uses death magic, as is to be expected. Myth has also slightly rebalanced the classic sliding scale for the warriors too. Tyrus is still the fastest warrior with the best magical capabilities. Axe Battler strikes the balance between magical and physical power. Gilius, while still having strong melee power of course, instead now has the highest health pool, while Death Adder is the strongest when it comes to raw attack damage. Adder's magic is also pretty strong too, but this is compensated for by his glacial pace of movement. To talk about the thing that sticks out most with Myth at a glance, this game definitely sports a very different art style when compared to the original series. Myth's style is definitely very cartoony, partly anime inspired for sure too. Not a bad one at all, though. I'm a big fan of how a lot of these characters are animated, actually, especially Gilius, and doubly so for his running animation. Tyrus also looks very nice too. I have no reason in particular for saying this.
Honka-donka-badonkas.
I've also learned that everything was drawn and animated for this game specifically. That's a level of dedication I haven't seen in an open BOR project yet. Custom sprites, movesets for each character, magical attacks for each character, enemies, and the levels too. It's actually a crazy amount of work for a project like this, so props to everyone that took part in it. Also, all of the music is respectful remixes of the original tracks, and the sound effects are pretty nice too. I can't complain. Gameplay-wise, it's also obviously pretty tight. This is open BOR after all, an absolutely perfect skeleton for any beat-em-up idea. Every character controls really well, and all their movesets are interesting and have their own gimmicks to use and abuse. On my winning run, for instance, I use Gilius, and instead of a falling attack like a Golden Axe character typically has, old Gil here has a Blanka Ball instead, one which he can keep balling from. One if you use, the enemy can barely ever deal with you. If you're playing Gil, by all means master this technique, and every enemy and every boss will basically be unable to touch you. Each character also now has an upward and downward dash for quick evasion of enemy attacks, in addition to their normal walk and run, obviously. I like Adder's up and down dash, because it looks like he's headbanging very hard. Each character can double jump now too, and in addition to evading attacks, you have a parry, which can send opponents into a stunned state if you successfully manage to deflect an attack. The game weirdly lists it as a block though, but don't be fooled, it functions right as a parry. There's also a rage mechanic in the game, which upon filling this little bar right here, you can activate. It massively increases your damage and makes you totally invincible for the duration. For pickups, you have the classics, of course, delicious looking video game food and magical pots, but there's also some new additions here. You have a Rage Potion, which fills your entire Rage bar, of course, as well as these trading cards, which teach you some random stuff about the characters in-game, heroes and villains. Biggest, though, are these little shields and swords, which raise your defensive power and attack power respectively. Useful for obvious reasons, especially for heavy hitters like Gilius, and also obviously for someone like Tyrus, who, having weaker melee power, this can compensate for it pretty well. Story-wise, Myth tells its tales through text box dialogue between the heroes and villains, though I won't lie, the dialogue in this game is a bit awkward at times. It seems we found one of their generals. I was, in fact, feeling a bit hungry. Were you gonna eat this man, Gilius? He will not allow us to pass without fighting. Let us rend him and feast on his flesh. I like that Death Adder's a complete psychopath in his lines. We should mess with that biff, believe me. But I'm going to chalk this up to the team not speaking English natively, or maybe it's just a poor translation. At the worst, the lines are funny, so it's not too bothersome, truth be told. An average playthrough of Myth will run you through about 11 levels of combat in total, with all sorts of side areas sprinkled throughout the experience. Even better is, after every big level you do, you'll get the choice to do battle in one of 2 different locations on the way to the next big level. There's a really good amount of replayability here with this game. Forests, cities, ice and lava caves, Great Wall of China, and even sandy beaches are among the locations you tour here in Myth. The levels look nice and are really diverse when it comes to the scenery. I love it. As is Golden Axe tradition too, you'll be able to mount up with a variety of monsters. It's here I have to dock some points of this game. There's no chicken leg. What the hell? I feel like the chicken leg always gets shafted when it comes to later Golden Axe games. Thankfully, the blue and pink dragons return, maintaining their AoE fire and fireball attacks, of course, in addition to a white dragon now with a frost breath that freezes enemies over entirely. There's also a golem, which is a giant, big, slow-ass monstrosity with a really long punch that clears the entire screen. My favorite of the new mounts, though, is probably the giant toad. When I first got on the toad, I panicked a bit because I wasn't being allowed to move. I thought the game might be broken, but as it turns out, the Toad can only move through jumping, which is both accurate and hilarious. Lastly, there's a Chimera that's unique in that it doesn't have a running attack, but its normal attack hits both in front of it and behind it. The running attacks of the beast are super strong now, though, no joke. Even more so than the breath attacks. Also, quick note, do not mash your mount's breath attack. This locks the creature up and leaves you completely vulnerable to be smacked down. Probably a bug, but not a fun one for certain. As for your enemies, you'll be doing battle with all sorts of miscreants, with some classics returning and a bunch of newbies to help shake things up quite a bit. You have your Longmoans and your Henneningers making their return here, on top of the Amazon women too, of course. Skeletons too, thankfully, but these ones are looking a lot less lively than they used to be, for certain. Guess Adder perfected necromancy versus this titan, that's for sure. The Bad Brothers are here as well. Interestingly, they're immune to dashing attacks in this game and will actively laugh in your face if you attempt to hit one on them. Bitter Knights return too, this time much slower, but this is compensated with by a projectile attack and the ability to teleport right on top of you. I guess technically Lizardmen would be returning too, but these guys don't even resemble the classic Golden Axe 2 ones, so I'll put them in an entirely new category. Same goes for the Deadwood, which I honestly thought was just some monster hiding in a tree trunk, but apparently it's just a whole dead-ass ent. You'll also now be menaced from the skies by Harpies as well. The Plasma Villain, which is an elementally based on what level you're fighting them in. Pretty cool, pretty cool. You also have these teeny monsters like the Baby Dragon and the Flying Plague. There's also the hilariously named Fat Rock, an obese rock golem who can explode himself to get you off him. Thieves, of course, return, but in addition to the green and blue, now sport white variants, which drop the shield and sword power-ups, and red variants, which drop the rage potions. She'll also do battle with a new cavalcade of bosses too, but I gotta be honest, the first boss is more of a funny one to me than anything. Look at this dude, he's got snakes for hands. More intimidating at least is the Mega Giant, a cycloptic nightmare. The Dragon Master, who, while he looks cool, is probably the easiest boss to beat since he's very easily parried. Then there's the Swamp Demon, which is just a giant head, one that melts when you kill him. Oh yeah, to bring it up briefly, there's a good bit of gore in this game too. A lot of enemies just fall to pieces on death. The basic grunts get their limbs hacked off, and a few bosses just melt into piles of shit. Also, if your magic kills basic enemies, it fries them into skeletons. It even fries the skeletons into skeletons. Once again, I have to say, I like the gore. It appeals to my lizard brain. After you've hacked your way through the lands of Uria to the final level, a very evil-looking cave, you'll eventually cross blades with the Obscure Titan. A titan made of snakes, much like Death Adder, and one who falls back into snakes when you start whooping on him. After his phase 1 goes down, he morphs into a horrid centaur creature for another fight. You put him down again and your quest has succeeded. Hooray! Except oops, Death Adder betrays everyone and steals the axe, putting together his own army, having the family of the other heroes slaughtered, and setting the stage for the first Golden Axe game. It's then you unlock Classic Death Adder. Honestly, I wasn't expecting unlockable characters here, so that's pretty cool. He's like the normal Death Adder, except way stronger, and he wields the legendary Golden Axe itself. The game then also hits you with an epilogue level that takes place in Hell. You fight a big-ass golem, and then you fight the evil versions of the entire main cast. I accidentally did this fight with Classic Adder, which kinda adds a neat story beat since you can headcanon it to be Death Adder killing the last bits of good within himself to claim ultimate power. And after that epilogue level, the game ends with the dev team humbly thanking you for playing. Honestly guys, thank you for making this. Golden Axe Myth is a pretty fun little game. It's a bit rough around the edges in truth, but a pretty well made and enjoyable game for sure. Honestly, it feels more like a Golden Axe than half the games I played for this retrospective. And now friends, this is where I can truly put this retrospective to rest. So, for this retrospective, I reviewed 11 games in total. Golden Axe 1, Golden Axe 2, Golden Axe, The Revenge of Death Adder, Altered Beast, Golden Axe Warrior, Axe Battler, The Legend of Golden Axe, Golden Axe 3, Golden Axe, The Duel, Sega Ages Golden Axe Beast Rider, and Golden Axe Myth. While it might not be fair to put them on this list, I'm going to keep Altered Beast and Golden Axe Myth for the eventual full rating. I looked at Golden Axe 2, but that was an unfinished demo, so it won't be part of the rankings, of course. Ranking up the Golden Axe series, at least in my opinion, would look like this. The number 1 game is Revenge of Death Adder. It really is the best Golden Axe, bar none. The first Golden Axe would be quickly behind it at number 2. Golden Axe really is just a good game. It's a rock solid beat 'em up, and it's just super fun to play. Golden Axe The Duel would be at number 3. Admittedly, I'm kind of biased because, you know, I love fighting games, but Golden Axe The Duel was a really pleasant surprise. It was a lot of fun. I'd like to play it again sometime. Slot number 4 would be Golden Axe 2. Golden Axe 2 essentially is just Golden Axe 1, but it has that sweet charge magic mechanic, which, why did they never bring that back for future Golden Axes, huh? It's a great idea. Number 5 would be Golden Axe Myth. Myth is a rough fan game. It has its problems, but honestly, it's a really, really fun Golden Axe game. Not much else to say. Number 6 would be Altered Beast. Honestly, Altered Beast ends up being higher just because of, like, the history. You know, it was the precursor to Golden Axe, obviously. So, that, and it's actually a pretty wacky, funny game. You can get a lot of enjoyment out of Altered Beast if you decide to play it. Golden Axe 3 would be at number 7. 3 isn't a bad game, but it just felt weirdly not like Golden Axe. I mean, I liked it a lot. But yeah, it's definitely not better than the rest of the ones I've listed already. At number 8 would be Beast Rider. Beast Rider is not a good game by any stretch, but I mean, at the least, Tyrus is pretty hot and the Snake Women are pretty hot. You know, there's pluses and minuses there. Golden Axe Warrior would be at number 9. I really fucking hate top-down adventure games, so yeah. This game had no chance. Maybe it'd be higher for someone else, but this game sucks and I hate it. Sega Ages Golden Axe would be at number 10. That game is an absolute mess, and like technically it's terrible too because of all the slowdowns, so it's why it ends up being so low on this list. And at the bottom spot is Axe Battler: Legend of Golden Axe. The combat system sucked, the battles sucked, the leveling sucked. Everything about that game just sucked, but yeah, it's a Game Gear game, so what am I expecting, really? At least I ended this series on a high note. Since the revival of Streets of Rage 4, though, I've been hopeful for another Golden Axe. Preferably from the same exact guys that did Streets of Rage 4, of course. I don't know what they'd do with it, but I know they'd kill it when it comes to gameplay, and honestly, that's what matters most. Until a new Golden Axe game comes out, though, I'll have to say goodbye to the series. It'll always be a series that means a lot to me, obviously, it being one of the games that helped form my taste and interest in video games over time, but it's time to move on now. I don't think I'll ever do another full retrospective like this again, at least not for a bit, and even if I did, I don't think I'd announce it like I did with the first one, so I can work on a given series as I like. Regardless, we'll see what the future holds. As always, though, thanks for watching, really. My name is HadesManticore, this here channel is City State Manticore, and this monster was the Golden Axe Retrospective. I'll see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.